Hi, I'm Justin Boyd.
I'm back. I'm Brittany Pacheco.
And I'm Drew, their brother friend from the north.
And we are the Watchers in the Basement.
Welcome to the Watchers in the Basement. Today we're here to talk about The Flash. Yes, the movie I was looking forward to the most, the much maligned now movie all of a sudden, The Flash. Before we get going with everyone's thoughts about the movie, let's go through some Flash facts. The movie was released on June 16th, 2023. It is the 13th official movie of the DC Extended Universe, although technically it's the 14th if you count Zack Snyder's Justice League. Box office, it's not doing too well, although, it's almost made back its budget. It's at 139 million worldwide, budget of 220 million, runtime of 2 hours, 23 minutes, directed by Andy Muschietti, who did the It movies, It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. The screenplay was by Christina Hodson, who did the Bumblebee movie. That was actually a pretty decent movie. So, yeah. And then, of course, the cast includes Ezra Miller, Sasha Calle, Michael Shannon, Ron Livingston, Maribel Verdú, Kiersey Clemons, Antje Traue, Jeremy Irons, Ben Affleck, and, of course, the return of Michael Keaton as Batman. Brittany, since, Michael Keaton's back and now you're back also, what are your overall thoughts of The Flash?
I'm Batman. No, I'm just kidding. Man, I should have opened with that. Damn it.
There you go.
Missed opportunity. No. So we all know here, or at least everyone here should know, that I am not the biggest DC fan, period. Out of the 13 official movies, as Justin pointed out, there's only one that I actually like, and it's Wonder Woman. Now, having watched this one very recently, and by very recent, I mean 11 a.m. this morning, this movie took me by surprise. After Justin, you first watched it, I'll let you tell your story. I was almost determined to not like it just because you liked it so much. I'm like, no. I got to be that one person. I got to be that one person that, we bring controversy into this pod. But quite honestly, I really enjoyed the movie. It was entertaining as hell. It was funny. There's some things that didn't work in terms of CGI. I think there's certain parts of it that just, I'm like, wow, this movie took so long to come out anyway. It's like, y'all couldn't have gone back and done better. But anyway, this movie, I really was entertained and I really did enjoy it. Now, does it top Wonder Woman? You'll have to stick around and find out. So, Drew, what are your thoughts on this movie?
I was thoroughly surprised. As I said, prior to this, I was messaging with Justin, and I had finally gotten a chance to see Fast 10, Fast X, whatever is going by, and got caught up and got to watch the podcast with him and Franklin and made some comments there. But then his thing, I'm going to go see The Flash tonight. I'm like, oh, he must have got an early screening. So I went on opening late afternoon on the 16th, and I kept an open mind. I haven't thought that any of the DC movies were that horrible. I know Batman or Superman gets knocked on a lot. I did enjoy the first Wonder Woman. I did like Aquaman and the Justice League, and I think you needed the Superman versus Batman to sub Justice League. But I was pleasantly surprised. It was entertaining. I was thoroughly entertained. I thought it was a touch too long, but I'm just getting older, so maybe sitting that long gets to me. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have no complaints. It's definitely not in the caliber of an MCU movie, but if you like superheroes and you like The Flash and other movies, I don't see how you couldn't like this one.
Yeah, that's well said. This is my most anticipated movie of the year, as I mentioned before. I've been super excited for a long time, and mainly because Michael Keaton returning as Batman. I mean, how cool is that? Michael Keaton, the 1989 Batman was, I think it's one of the first big blockbusters of ever, but certainly in my life. I remember that movie vividly, like when it was coming out when I was like 9 years old, and the commercials and Batmania was running wild. And there was Batman stickers and buttons. Every store you went to had some kind of Batman merchandise. So the fact that he was coming back after 31 years, the last time we saw him was in Batman Returns. That really got me excited. And I think I was going to like the movie regardless, but honestly, this movie is better than I expected it to be. And I really think that to me, it's easily the best movie of the DCEU, which again, that's a very low bar to clear. It's my favorite, no doubt. It's to me, it's the most entertaining. It's the most rewatchable. And I've seen the movie 4 times. I'm a little bit of a crazy person compared to the average moviegoer, but it's a movie I could see a 5th time and not feel bored. I feel like it's it's kind of got it's not as good as Spider-Man No Way Home, but it's similar. The main reason why it's not as good is because the MCU is just so well made and produced, whereas the DCU has been a broken universe from the start almost. Like, I mean, the first couple movies had a lot of really questionable stuff. And, this movie, I'm really surprised at how negative people have been about this movie. Cause I'm just like, this movie is like very entertaining. And, I hear stuff like, oh, well, it's superhero fatigue or it's multiverse fatigue, because this is obviously a multiverse story because the Flash goes back in time and tries to change things, save his mom and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, maybe, but like we just had Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and that's a multiverse story, and people seem to like that. So I don't know if it's a multiverse fatigue, but I tell you what, for me, there's a negativity fatigue. I'm just like tired of like all these superhero movies are just like treated like trash. And it kind of started with Multiverse of Madness last year, which, by the way, almost made $1 billion. Thor: Love and Thunder, which I really enjoyed, which people didn't like. It made quite a bit of money. This year we've had, Quantumania, which I thought was fine. Like even back to Wonder Woman 84 when it came out on Christmas 2020, like I thought that movie was like a superhero movie. It wasn't like the worst thing ever. And people have just kind of been piling on these movies. And this movie, for whatever reason, to me, has received a lot of unfair criticism because this movie is like super entertaining. You got, 3 different versions of Batman. I mean, you've got multiple versions of all these characters, and it tells a pretty good story. And
yeah, has some interesting cameos
and very interesting cameos. Yeah. So let's go ahead.
I was going to ask you guys a question. You did the spoilers alert. So do you think the whole thought about the plate of spaghetti was people in the DCU kind of making fun of themselves and poking fun at all the negativity? I thought that was hilarious. I mean, that was one of the best things that described why you shouldn't mess with time travel. I had spaghetti afterwards. I was so inspired. I had a plate of spaghetti. I went and got some. So
I mean,
I'm tempted to make spaghetti now.
The whole movie, spaghetti was a huge part of the movie. I mean, from, obviously Barry's mom made like the best spaghetti ever. She needed a can of tomatoes from the dad had to go to the store to get it. Right. That's when she was killed while he was gone. That's why Barry goes back in time to try to change that. Obviously, Michael Keaton, whenever we meet him, this 70-year-old man, Bruce Wayne, who's no longer or hasn't been Batman in years, and he's explaining the multiverse by using spaghetti, which I thought was a very good, telling of how to explain the multiverse. Honestly, I thought the way they explained the multiverse in this movie was better than the way it's been explained in other movies. I really do. I think it made the most sense.
I mean, I agree with that.
Not that this stuff really makes sense because it's all make believe stuff. But I mean, like, you know what I mean?
In Endgame, we kind of got some sort of explanation about plucking the stones out of different timelines and how it creates branches of a different timeline from the main timeline. And Bruce Banner's like, well, if we put it back, then that branch doesn't exist anymore. It goes back to the main timeline. Okay, I can kind of accept that. But then with the explanation from Michael Keaton, Bruce Wayne of you can have like your parallel and then they'll like intersect, but with that intersection, it means that you have a completely different past and a completely different future. The one point where it intersects, that's where it only makes sense. I'm like, okay, I can accept that too. But then further the point of the cooked spaghetti puts it in the bowl. And then you just have like all these, these timelines intertwined and some of it is just inevitable. And I'm like, okay, I can accept that. I actually can accept that explanation of multiverse and how timelines they just don't work or they work differently based on what we've known from other movies like Back to the Future. Back to the Future was like a big thing that was, brought up in this movie, and how Michael J. Fox is not Marty McFly or things. I'm like, wait a minute. Like this is so bizarre.
And that's a true story. Eric Stoltz was cast as Marty McFly. They started shooting the movie with Eric Stoltz and then he was replaced. Like you can find stuff on YouTube with Eric Stoltz, like at the diner with Biff from Back to the Future, like doing scenes with Doc Brown. Like it's pretty. I thought that was a really good joke that kind of played out throughout the movie was, the whole fact that Eric Stoltz was in Back to the Future Michael J. Fox was in Footloose, and Kevin Bacon was in Top Gun instead of Tom Cruise.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
That was my teenage years all torn upside. And actually, as they were saying that, I was like, it would have been a pretty entertaining route. So,
yeah, this movie. One thing about this movie that I was surprised it was as good as it was, or it was better than I thought it was gonna be. This movie was a lot funnier than I expected it to be too, because the trailers never really kind of made you feel like it was going to be a comedy.
I agree.
Like this movie is. I mean, obviously it's a superhero movie, so it's an action adventure movie, but like there's a lot of comedy in this movie. And a lot of that is, with Ezra Miller, the star of the movie. Obviously Ezra Miller, Ezra Miller has kind of, he's had, the actor's had a lot of off-screen issues, and that has kind of, I don't know if it's hampered the movie at all, but it's definitely made it a weird situation where Ezra is not really helping promote the film and has been kind of kept away from the press and stuff like that. But in this movie, I talk about the Batman of it, and there's a lot of great Batman stuff, and we're going to talk about all of that. But this is a Flash movie, and Ezra Miller plays multiple characters, and for much of the movie, he plays two versions of Barry Allen. Our current version in the DC EU of Barry, and then a alternate 2013 version. And to me, he kills it.
He's 18. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, Ezra, he brings the heart and humor to the movie. Really funny stuff. Brittany, what'd you think about Ezra Miller in this role? Because obviously, like I said, Ezra Miller is a very controversial figure in Hollywood and has been for a year or so.
Yeah. I mean, Justin and I have talked about this off screen, where Ezra had a lot of buzz last year surrounding a lot of legal things of allegations of having domestic violence and grooming and things of that nature, and we apologize.
Arrests. Yeah, like
a couple of arrests,
got into a fight at a karaoke bar, and then
theft.
The people that bailed him out of from being arrested at the karaoke bar, then he threatened to kill them the next day. Like there's
a lot going on.
I say Ezra Miller is a person who uses the pronouns of they, them. So grammatically, it's just tough for me to do that, but I understand. Right.
It's not that we're not trying to be respectful of,
it's just really
how a person identifies themselves. We're just going to slip. It just happens. Yeah. Okay. Like, don't come at us, people. But with Ezra, again, with everything that happened last year, and it was like the beginning of last year, all the way towards the end of last year, a lot of negative energy going around Ezra's life. And I think the fact and how I personally feel with how Warner Brothers as a whole has dealt with allegations versus actual crimes that have happened and have done nothing to correct the situation, i.e. firing actors, just floors me. That's a separate topic for a separate pod. But with Ezra, take away the personal stuff that goes on in their life, I've always found Ezra to be a fantastic actor. And that goes back to the first time I ever saw Ezra, which was in Perks of Being a Wallflower, which had Emma Watson and Logan Lerman, teenage, high school, drugs, alcohol, that kind of thing. But Ezra was phenomenal in that movie. I feel the same with this performance of Barry and The Flash. Now, mind you, I don't know anything about The Flash. I don't know anything about this Barry. I think it's a completely different name from other Flash adaptations, right? Like the character has a completely different name.
Well, there's Wally West and there's Jay Garrick and
that's what I mean,
like
right?
Right, but I mean Barry Allen is kind of considered to be like the main Flash. Yeah.
So again, I know nothing about the Flash. I'm not a big DC person outside of, like, let's say Batman. Like Batman, Michael Keaton, Batman. That's right. My Batman, right? But with the Flash, I know there were a lot of people, including my brother, who felt like, no, this was miscasting for Ezra Miller to be the Flash. Like I don't care for their version of the Flash versus, let's say, the one from television. But for me, I was always entertained by Ezra as being the Flash. Silly when it was appropriate, but also smart when it was appropriate. And for Ezra to play two versions of the same character, an 18-year-old version and then like a probably 20-something-year-old version, to show the difference between maturity and how obnoxious one can be, I thought was done very well, very seamless. Like you could easily differentiate who was who. And you could see how when Barry towards the very end realized that the inevitable timeline of basically his mother had to die in order for his future to, be the future that he knew. And that was something that 18-year-old Barry couldn't accept, right? And thus becoming that really obsessive sort of Flash, right?
He became the Dark Flash, right?
Dark Flash. So again, I don't know anything about DC and stuff. Thank you. So, but for our version of Barry to realize, like, wow, this has to happen. I came in with the intention of going back in time to save my mom, and I got kicked into that timeline of my 18-year-old self to try and save my mom, but then it ultimately just like screwed up everything else. And I have to accept the fact that this is just what it has to be. It's inevitable. There's some things that you can't fix. Some problems don't have solutions. And I think that was basically the heart of the theme of this movie. And it's very true. It's hard to accept, but it's very true. But I really did appreciate Ezra's adaptation of both versions of Barry. I'm okay with it. Outside of performance, don't care for the person. Yeah, but actor wise, I think Ezra is a great actor.
Drew, what are your thoughts on Ezra Miller in this movie as the Flash?
So I'm so detached from the social media stuff. I was aware of what was going on, and I could definitely tell Ezra Miller, the person, was not helping promote the movie. So that I just knew enough about that. But I remember, I think it was 2017, and I remember being first introduced to him as the Flash, right, in the first Justice League movie. I thought it was very entertaining. I saw, I only remember Barry Allen myself, and I'm just about 10 years old, you guys. So I remember in like 1990, they came out with a Flash show for a little while. I think it was on, I don't know if FX exists or whatever.
It was on CBS at that time.
Was it CBS? Yeah. It was entertaining, and that followed the story well. Unfortunately, it fell to the wayside, but I was glad to see when the DC, was it DCU or DCU at that time? In 2017. Yeah. So when they brought him in, I'm like, this is a very entertaining character, playing a little bit younger. I messaged with you after seeing it on Friday morning that he has more of a Peter Parker feel. I said it has some No Way Home vibes, but I thought he did a great job. And what amazed me is the scenes where he was in together. I mean, I know they had to film them separately, but it was like he had an identical twin brother. I was absolutely blown away how they interacted and how I didn't think, I know some of the CGI was in question, but that was just seamless. So I was impressed, and I liked it. And that whole thing about, you talked about the difference in age and maturity. I thought it was interesting. The Barry Allen that we know is trying so hard to fix things. The younger one's like, dude, I don't know what, I've done everything you asked me to. He's like, what? He's just kind of like, give me a break, man. I don't know where you're coming from. So that was interesting dynamics. And again, it was like two people talking to each other. So I don't know if another person read the lines, green screen, and, eventually an editing worked out, but it was very seamless and very impressive.
Yeah, they had an actor. The way they did it was they had an actor who was
like a stand-in.
Almost, and like he looked very similar to Ezra Miller, and they would do the scene with Ezra as one of the Flashes, and there was one of the Barry Allens, and they would do it again opposite with Ezra as the other Flash. And I mean, I think Ezra's great in this movie. I mean, to me, like take the actor's personal issues aside. Ezra Miller's a talented actor.
Absolutely.
But I do agree. Ezra made their debut in the DCU briefly in Batman v Superman, because in the movie, Barry Allen, reaches out for Bruce Wayne, and like Bruce is his nightmare dream. And so and then we see. Oh,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. I forgot about that.
That's where he was introduced. And he's been in a couple different projects. He's had cameo appearances in Peacemaker. And he would a cameo appearance, a little more than a cameo in Suicide Squad, the first Suicide Squad from 2016, and of course in the Justice League that came out in the theaters, and of course Zack Snyder's Justice League, which was the 4-hour version. Ezra Miller has a much bigger part in that movie, of course. But like y'all, I did not. Go ahead, Brittany.
I was just gonna say one of my favorite lines from Ezra as Barry Allen. I can't remember which movie because I don't care. When Barry meets Diana Prince for the very first time, and she, introduced herself, and he goes, "Hi, Barry, I'm Diana." He's like, "No, that's not right." Just how silly,
Yeah.
a young man can be in meeting a beautiful woman, and it's just like you just kind of like lose it, and but then that self-aware, like, no, that's not right. Like that, it's just that little bit is just funny to me. It's memorable, it's lasting, and I agree. Ezra as an actor is, I think, great. I think has done a phenomenal job in their work, and just the person as a whole is not so good.
Yeah, I think the thing is, I think like a lot of people, and this is the way I felt whenever I first saw Ezra Miller as the Flash. It's definitely a different take on the character. Barry Allen is supposed to be kind of like a more mature Peter Parker, whereas this version, Ezra's version of the Flash, was like, I've heard them describe the character as like almost like playing the character on the spectrum. Like the character obviously has a lot of, isn't comfortable with around people, and has a lot of like, kind of OCD kind of tics or nervous tics. And so that's how they decided to play this character. And while I don't think that was maybe the best way to start off with, I'm so used to it now that, this movie wouldn't work without Ezra Miller, obviously. That's why this movie wasn't going to get canceled. Whenever people were over the last couple of years were saying like, oh, why doesn't Warner Brothers just cancel this movie? They couldn't cancel this movie. They couldn't replace Ezra Miller because Ezra Miller is in every scene of the movie, and in some of the scenes, there's 2 Ezra Millers in the scene. So, you couldn't replace this actor without just completely redoing the whole movie. So, but
fair.
Fair.
I'm just not content with how Warner Brothers has chosen to deal with certain actors and their behaviors, and yet they let go of another actor, Johnny Depp.
Right.
Again, separate pod, separate day. Anyway,
I
just don't agree with how Warner Brothers has handled things because money, but yet they're going to go ahead and shoot a whole movie, Batgirl, and then, it's better for tax purposes to just, kill the movie entirely, but we're going to keep the Flash. That's fine. Sure. We'll go with that.
Yeah, but the Flash was a $200 million, movie for theaters, and the Batgirl was made for streaming originally. So that's the reason why it was cheaper to make.
Yeah, but it hasn't grossed what it's put into it. So
no, it hasn't. It has not. And
just saying,
maybe people are taking out on the movie, but I think the movie's great. Honestly, I really enjoyed it.
I agree. I think the movie's great.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's not getting back what it's put into it. And
no, it's not. Definitely
I think
not.
a lot of it may involve a couple of things, like what you mentioned earlier about superhero fatigue, the fact that, DC just hasn't really produced any consistent, continuous line of good movies, in my personal opinion. And then also the buzz around Ezra Miller as an actor. I think it's a combination of those things. It could solely just be one of those things. I think it's just a combination of those things personally.
Yeah. I honestly, like with this movie, I don't know what they don't like about the movie. It's got a little bit of everything. It's very entertaining. And
could it be just a thing where it's cool or the in thing to do to like just hate on superhero movies?
Maybe, but this is basically the final. It's not officially the final movie of the DCU, because there's an Aquaman movie coming up in December. There's a Blue Beetle movie coming up in a couple months.
I saw previews for that today.
And Blue Beetle. What's weird about Blue Beetle is James Gunn has said that Blue Beetle is the first character of the DCU, but the movie is not a part of the DCU. So that's kind of strange, because the first official movie of the DCU will be Superman Legacy. That's supposed to come out in 2 years' time.
Do we have a Superman? Do we have a Superman? No.
No, but they're going to cast somebody, and that's going to be a separate. They're going to reboot, and they're just going to move on. And I guess after the Flash is showing at the box office, it's clear people want to move on from this version of DC characters. Or maybe people don't want DC movies at all. I don't know. Maybe they just want Batman and Joker movies. Maybe that's the only things people care about. So anyway, speaking of
that,
go ahead.
I know that the first Aquaman did outstanding, as did the first Wonder Woman, and
right.
people I've only a couple days from seeing it, people ask me, would I like the Flash? I said, well, did you like the Justice League that I saw in the theaters? And like, if you had the time, you like the 401, which I did. I said, if you like that, and you like the Flash's appearance in that's where I remember him having the most interaction. I said, I think if you like that, like I said in my intro, you're going to like the Flash, at least, for sure. Because this movie had everything you want in a superhero. It had a great storyline. Brittany touched on it, and as did you, Justin, but the emotional heartstrings. I mean, that thing with his mom was, I know it was Father's Day and I'm a dad too, but I was like, good thing this didn't come on Mother's Day, because I'd just be an emotional wreck. Because it was, she was whoever that actually played his mom. She was great. I mean, she felt like she could be everybody's mom. She was so warm, and, especially that scene at the end when he knows it's time to do that. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was choking back some man tears. That was some intense stuff.
Also, shout out to mi gente. Like she's one of my people. I'm like, they made Barry Allen, half Hispanic. Like, that's what's up. That's cool.
I digress, guys. Sorry, I just wanted to say that. I agree with that. So
no, honestly, like that scene at the end is one of the best emotional scenes in a superhero movie. Honestly, because Barry knows he has to go back and. He doesn't kill his mom, but he has to allow her to be killed.
Exactly.
That's a tough thing. I mean, I do think that it is interesting in this movie. One of the things that I think is not a plot hole, but it is strange that we don't find out in the movie who killed his mother.
Yeah, that is that was interesting too.
I mean, there is a part early in the movie where Barry talks when he's talking to Iris West, who is his. In this movie, they're just kind of friends, but it's his hopefully to be soon, love interest. They talk about how, if Barry goes back in time and as long as he doesn't interact with anybody, it's okay. But he basically says that he basically implies that basically an intruder just broke in when the dad was away and killed the mother. Now in the comic books and in the story that this movie is based on, the Flashpoint comic book story, it's the Reverse Flash, which is Barry's arch nemesis who kills his mother. We didn't see the Reverse Flash in this movie. There was some talk that the Reverse Flash would be the villain if there were a sequel. There's not going to be a sequel, so that's a bummer. But I did think it was kind of strange that there was no mention of the killer, or why wouldn't Barry want to look into that more? So
on top of that too, not that it's a plot hole per se, it's just it shifted focus from Barry going back to save his mom, and then now we have this General Zod thing to focus on. That was, I understand the point of it, to try to show that because this element of the timeline didn't change, or it did change to where she stayed alive, it meant that we didn't have Kal-El or Superman to, come and save the day with General Zod and all, so one thing can change the whole course of the future, right? I understand the purpose of that. I just felt like it got lost along the way. If the main focus was for Barry to go and save his mom, then now we have this other big bad that we have to worry about. And I don't know, it just seemed a little disjointed.
Yeah.
I understand the purpose, but it just felt a little disjointed.
It would have needed to be a 3 or 4 hour movie for it to pull that off.
Oh God, I can't do that again.
I know.
Mentally, I cannot handle that.
Back to one of your favorite groups of movies, and I'm a fan too, but when it's kind of like we hit the nos quick, because the opening scene and seeing Wonder Woman right away and Batman,
which I was surprised.
Affleck, I was thoroughly surprised. I'm like, oh wow, this is taking an interesting, cool turn. So and he played every hero, so I thought that was kind of neat. I didn't watch enough previews, or I missed it in some that I realized it wasn't going to be. I was wondering what was going on with Superman, but we'll get into that a little bit more. But and we'll talk about some of the other cameos too. But we were talking about the timeline and the last thing. I think they just wanted to try to wow those of us that have been watching the DC movies all the way going back to the original Batman in '89. That I felt a bit like you could hear the race car coming up behind you, and then all of a sudden there's the Batman, Michael Keaton's Batman. They want to make sure and they make sure you get to see the Batmobile from back there. So there was some of that wow factor. I think they're really trying to make sure. I think I wonder if that's where some of it got lost in Brittany, because Justin was like, wouldn't you think he'd go back to find the killer? And I did not read the Flashpoint series, so I'll have to go back and do that now that I know it's based off of. I haven't done a lot of research on the movie, Justin. I just wanted to go see it just for pure face value.
Well, and Brittany, if you wouldn't mind, could you throw up the Flashpoint comic? So this is my copy of the Flashpoint comic. It's one of DC's biggest comics. It came out in 2011. Is written by Jeff Johns, who is pretty legendary DC writer. And so in Flashpoint, now the thing about the movie, like I said, it's loosely based on Flashpoint. In Flashpoint, though, there's a lot of differences. Like, for example, Barry does go back in time to save his mom. But in the comic book, when he goes back in time, he, instead of meeting up with a Batman, he meets up with a Batman, but he meets up with Thomas Wayne, who is Bruce Wayne's father.
Okay.
Because in this alternate universe, instead of Thomas and Martha Wayne dying, Bruce Wayne is actually the person who dies in the alleyway.
The son.
So the son
killed,
dies.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
yep.
so,
I remember hearing about this. Okay.
So Thomas Wayne becomes a gun-toting Batman, and he's a vigilante basically.
That's what's up.
And Martha Wayne goes crazy and becomes the Joker.
Wow.
In the storyline. Yeah. And also in this storyline, you have Aquaman and Wonder Woman. They're on opposite. They each have their armies. Like you have Aquaman and the Atlanteans. You have Wonder Woman and her, wars. Amazonians.
Yep.
So they're at war over the world, over the fate of the world, right? And Cyborg is like the superhero who works for the government, and he's trying to recruit Batman and other superheroes to stop this war because the Atlanteans and the Amazons are going to destroy the world. And then also you have Superman, who is much like how we see Supergirl in this movie. Superman, whenever he landed, he didn't land in Kansas as a child. He landed in a place where the government found him. They put him in a facility, and he grows up, and he's stunted. Okay. He's very thin, and which is what we see with Supergirl in this movie. So I did like how this movie made a lot of changes. Obviously, they instead of having a Thomas Wayne Batman, which would have taken a lot of explanation, to me, it made so much sense to bring Michael Keaton back and have like the first on big screen Batman return, because nostalgia is like a hell of a drug, honestly. And especially Michael Keaton, like it's so iconic, that bat suit, that bat wing, that Batmobile, obviously.
The music,
everything about that. To me, that just worked so well in this movie. I knew it would. And I was actually like, I wish we had more of it. And I wish we had more Michael Keaton going forward. I don't think we're going to get any of this stuff going forward, but no. I agree with you, Cynthia. I missed him too. I think he's great as Batman. And I just want to point out this Batman, this is, while it is a version of the 1989 Batman, it's not directly the 1989 Batman. It's an alternate version that just so happens to be the same person. Right. It just so happens to be that person. So that Batman was awesome. We get to go ahead.
Real quick, I just wanted to mention, and it's something I appreciate because we no longer have this actor. This Batman did not have an Alfred Pennywise. And that's because Pennyworth. You said it earlier.
Yeah.
I know the director did it.
Oh
my God, so many things. No, so this Michael Keaton Batman did not have an Alfred Pennyworth, and that's because Michael Gould, I can never pronounce his last name.
It's Gaw.
Gaw. He had passed away some years back. Who is our Alfred Pennyworth, right? And he played Alfred, Keaton, Kilmer, Clooney.
We'll get to that guy.
We'll get to that guy later. But yeah, I thought that was now whether that was done intentionally or not, I don't know. But that's just something I had noticed that I'm like, oh, cool. They didn't, bring in another Alfred.
I'm glad they did. That was very respectful
with Michael Keaton.
Absolutely.
Bringing back Jeremy Irons to be Alfred with Ben Affleck, fine. Makes sense. But to not bring in Alfred with Keaton, I think that was a wise decision, and I actually really appreciate that.
I agree 1,000%. And real quick, Justin, I thought, with all this stuff going on now that you explained the Flashpoint, I really had this feeling because I've read a lot of the Batman series. I really had that Dark Knight Returns, which came out in 87 or 86. Before that, I'm like, is he going to do the Batman comes back after being gone for a decade or so? And I kind of had that feel and that hope, but I wasn't disappointed. But I kind of had everything that was going on with all this stuff, and I was like, are we going to take a more of a dark, is this the Dark Knight Returns kind of thing? But it was entertaining, and I enjoyed what he did. The kitchen scene was hilarious.
Yeah, the
kitchen gets some spaghetti. So
it was great. It was so awesome.
Yep.
But I just want to point out, Brittany, the reason why there's no Alfred in this movie for Michael Keaton is because obviously Michael Keaton is a 70-year-old version of Batman, so Alfred has died in his universe, and so that's why and that's part of what Barry uses to tug on his heartstrings. He tells
people can live to be 100 these days. Just saying.
No, I know, but this is the Batman who's
Yeah.
it's like I said, it's not. It's Michael Keaton playing Batman, but it's not the same Batman from that universe.
Yeah.
But you would think, obviously, 30 years later, even in that universe, Alfred might not be around. There's a decent chance he's not around. So,
sure.
But I did like the way how
Mr. Freeze's cure, probably didn't work in this universe. It's fine.
Exactly. There you go. But I did like how, obviously, whenever we first meet Michael Keaton, he's in the kitchen. The two Barrys show up. They're looking for Batman, and he doesn't want to help him out, of course. And then later on, Barry's on the Bat computer, and he knows that he knows that Bruce Wayne's watching him. He tells him, like, look, like, I know you're watching me. Like, you had an Alfred. The Batman, who's my friend, he has an Alfred, and he basically tugs on the Alfred heartstrings to get Michael Keaton's Batman to
protect Alfred at all costs.
There you go. So, with Michael Keaton Batman back, he had a different suit. We got to see all of the suits he's had over the years. Drew, what did you think about that when he opened up the library and he's got the 6 or 7 of these amazing bat suits?
The movie was going on such nostalgia. I mean, you had everything from Gal Gadot and all that at the beginning it was just a fun ride. I'm like, that made sense. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I believe those are the suits from the different variations from that series. He started that went to Val Kilmer, to George Clooney, to trying to think. Yeah, no, George Clooney was the last one of that group.
That's where it ended. Yeah.
I'm just making sure it wasn't someone else. And they're like Kevin Bacon, or something. Interesting that Kevin Bacon, because he was such a thing with the Guardians that they were able to mention that in Top Gun. I was like, well, if Wonder Marvel's gonna have an issue with that, but I think they'll let some things go. So.
Yeah. They don't own
I enjoyed it. Yeah, I thought it was cool.
They don't own the rights to Kevin Bacon.
Exactly, that's true.
But
after that Christmas special, I'm like, what? They have that. So that was interesting that they used Kevin Bacon. I just chuckled heavily at that. I'm like, so James Gunn had nothing to do with this, correct? This movie.
Well, so James Gunn was hired in November of this year.
Okay, that's what I thought. So this movie was well on its way.
The movie was shot in 2021.
It was completed though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, they redid the ending of the movie. We're gonna ending later.
Well, that was the only thing I thought of with. I thought that was a little James Gunn slap back at after becoming that with the Kevin Bacon thing, but I didn't see any other ties back to stuff to MCU. I thought it was hilarious. Just a side note.
Yeah,
of all the 80s actors they picked Kevin Bacon. Sorry to interrupt you.
No. So I think all the Kevin Bacon, Eric Stoltz, Back to the Future stuff, I think that was already in the movie. I think the only thing James Gunn was really maybe a part of was the very end of the movie and the post credit. And then, I mean, who knows? He may have had notes here and there, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But sticking with Keaton, I love seeing we saw the Batmobile. I wish we would have seen more of it. All we did was see younger Barry take the covering off of it, and it looked awesome in its all of its glory from back in the Batman and Batman Returns days. I wish we could have seen it somehow. I mean, I guess there really wasn't a reason for him to drive when he's with two speedsters. I guess flying to Siberia to help save Supergirl made more sense than. Maybe they could have had some kind of scene where there's something in Gotham where he had to drive, but
listen, I don't know what you call the bat plane or whatever. Batwing. Yeah, Batwing. I should know this. Hello.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Seeing the silhouette in the moon, my God, that was so cool because it's like a callback to the bat signal. Yeah. It just it's just so cool to see. I mean, the entire time I'm just like Hercules.
And in the original movie, if you remember, he shoots up and puts the bat wing in the moon. Yeah. So that was great. Just a callback. Some of the callbacks are fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, the whole reason I wanted to see this movie had nothing to do with the Flash. Had absolutely nothing to do with DC.
Yeah.
I was solely here to see Michael Keaton back in the suit to say, I'm Batman. Like that was my whole purpose. I was just so excited.
Yeah, he got in all his good sayings. He got in let's get nuts. You want to get nuts, let's get nuts. He even asked their weight before in that scene with the elevator. Like that's famous from he asked Kim Basinger in the first one, how much do you weigh as they they're using the batter or the grappling gun. I did like it. There was a part where when they get to Siberia and he uses the grappling gun to try to get in there. And of course, our Barry, who has lost his powers, then has to hold on to Batman. and Batman like just like puts his arm around just like he does like Vicky Vale in the first movie. That was so awesome. Yeah, all the callbacks. It was great, honestly. I loved every bit of it. And then the Michael Keaton as Batman action. I mean, a lot of it obviously was stuntmen.
Sure.
But I mean, some of the best Batman fighting scenes I've ever seen on screen were in this movie. He was, doing karate moves and kicks and using the Batarang and punching dudes. And like, it was, I mean, then he's fighting Namek, who's one of the Kryptonians. He's fighting, obviously he dies fighting the Namek, but like, the way he fought Kryptonians, the way he blew up 2 Kryptonian ships in the Batwing, and he like used those grappling guns and brings them together. Like that was so awesome to see that.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, and I don't remember this at all because 89 Batman, that was the year I was born. So don't recall it as well. Batman Returns is my favorite, like just hands down my favorite. Yeah. Does the Batwing rotate?
No, that's new. That's
okay.
New.
I was just going to ask because that made me very dizzy.
Yeah.
But that was very cool.
And it's a new Batwing. It's not the same Batwing from the 89 movie. Because in that movie, he crashes it whenever he's going after the Joker.
Yeah.
And so he made a bigger one. Obviously, it's more roomy. You see, like,
still not the same Batman, though. It's not the same Batman.
No, but it's the same actor as the Batman.
It's the same Batman.
And it's And I thought the Batcave looked awesome. Like the Batcave to me looked like an amalgamation of Keaton's Batcave mixed with Bale's Batcave.
I agree.
And those are the two best Batcaves. Those are the two Batcaves we spend the most time in, I believe, in the movies. Or those two. So I thought like they perfectly melded those two together. And like if that's an actual real set, I mean, who knows how much of that is like CGI? I would hang out there all day long. Like it's so cool. Like
it's very possible it could have been like partially a real set because I know they shot in Livingston, which is in London, where they shot Harry Potter. So it's very possible that a lot of it is actually like a set. How much couldn't tell you, but it was very cool. Yeah, I think the blending, what you're talking about, Keaton and Bale, just a great way of like blending the two, and then just like giving you this really, I can't think of the word for it, but just very believable sort of Batcave. Yeah, it's super cool.
Like when the Batwing is like it's hanging and it's coming down because they're about to leave or whatever. That's like cool. That's so cool. Like the music's playing and his suit was awesome. I love how Yesenia in the chat, she says left the stiff neck behind. That's one of the famous things about the 89 and 92 Batman is he couldn't turn. He had to physically turn his body like as he's driving or fighting. and so then the younger Barry, who once our Barry gets his powers back, the younger Barry takes the bat suit from Batman Returns, paints it red. That to me, that was awesome. The fact that he made a Flash suit out of an old Batman Returns suit,
so cool,
was awesome. I think that's so cool. Like I have the figure of that character just because like I think that looks so cool to see the bat. Like that's what my shirt is. I don't know if you can see, but it's got the bat.
Oh, cool!
Look at that. That's cool. Yeah, so, I like that.
I just think that's so cool that they did that. And you're right, Brittany. Like toward the end, whenever younger Barry turns to older Barry, and like he can't see out of the side, because of the
cowl,
he has to rip the cowl. The cowl and the neck, it's all stiff. Yeah,
that was great.
I just think all this stuff is like so awesome that they did. I'm just so impressed with everything that just the look of these characters. And like to me, they really did their homework with.
They did,
blending in. I mean, bringing Michael Keaton's Batman and all that stuff into the DCEU, like it doesn't sound like it would work, but they made it work.
Oh yeah, for sure. By the way, Yesenia says nice shirt.
Justin. Oh yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, I'm trying to get a good.
Nice, yeah.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah,
that was cool.
Very cool. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. No, it was neat how he younger Barry tries to make the Flash suit, but then you obviously clearly can tell it's Batman. But it's great. But that cowl thing, the stiff neck, just like just it's so great.
Rips it off.
Right.
His eyes are all. That was a lit. I mean, the little humor thing. I mean, I cracked up at that. It's just funny. Just the things,
That and he was comparing, of course, the bat suit to Flash's suit, and that bat suit was a lot roomier than the Flash suit. So
young Barry puts
Yeah.
that suit on for the first time.
He's like, oh, it's so tight. He's like, you know where it's tight? And then he
Yeah.
proceeds to tell him where it's tight. It's like, we get it, dude. Like, we get
Yeah.
it. We don't
It's just
we don't
funny.
need
Yeah.
to hear it. We get it.
It's very funny.
That was very funny.
What did y'all think of the ring? The fact that he had the flash ring, that the suit came out of that.
That
Drew, or Brittany, go ahead.
real quick, I mean, just that for me was very like Tony Stark like.
Yeah.
With, you know, Tony could just once he even got to the nanotech, it was basically just he I don't know, did something here with the chest, and then it would expand.
Yeah.
It just seemed very. Did Barry come up with that on his own, or did Bruce perhaps?
Yeah,
come
so
up
it's
with
Bruce
that?
Wayne. So Brittany, if you could throw up the other graphic I have for you, the other image. So this is the cover of the prequel comic, and it's a 3-issue run set before the movie. And honestly, like, I read this comic. It's not the greatest comic book storyline, but the cool part about this comic is Bruce gives Barry, because Barry has the problem with his suits, as he talked about in the movie, about how, you know, he runs too fast, he burns up his clothes, he's trying to get the right material. And let's be real, the Barry Allen's Flash suit that was in Justice League is I mean, it's just an eyesore. It's not those. To me, the suit in this movie looks great. The Flash suit, you know, it's all lit up, got the lights and everything, it looks awesome. And so in the comic book, Bruce Wayne develops the ring where you can keep this special suit in the ring. And so that's really the only reason maybe to like check out this comic book. Otherwise, like, you don't really need it to see the movie. But I think the ring was really cool, and I thought the suit looks great. What did y'all think about the suit?
I thought the suit was great. The one thing I noticed that I'm glad you mentioned about this prequel, that there had been somewhere between Justice League and this movie, Bruce Wayne had kind of taken, it reminded me kind of a lot like Tony Stark and Peter Parker, but with a little Bruce Banner in there too, because I happened to just glance at Age of Ultron over the weekend on the cable channels too. But the thought of, you have these scientific minds, and you've got a scientific mind with a lot of money helping out those that he can. So I really thought that was neat, how Bruce Wayne was, you know, mentoring and being a really good friend to someone, like you said, that was socially awkward and things like that. So that's what I liked, and it led to that suit. So you could definitely see there was Wayne Enterprises. You know, you would say they say Stark Tech in the MCU, but everything else, it was definitely Wayne Enterprises sponsored and supported and designed and all that. So I thought it was very cool.
Yeah, the suit looked cool. I like how it lit up, especially when he was about to, you know, take off running, and further the point, when our Barry gets back his powers and the suit, and then 18-year-old Barry has his own suit. The color of their I guess electricity or charge or whatever changed. So you have our Barry in the gold, and then 18-year-old Barry in the blue again, to differentiate. Which I thought that was very helpful, of course, to you know, keep up, because they're just so fast.
Right. And in the Justice League, in this, like the Snyder Cut, for example, our Barry Allen has blue lightning instead of the gold. But then this one they switched it up. So I thought it was a good change. I think it definitely looked cool. And
on that note of lightning, because again, I am not familiar with the Flash. I don't do DC like I do with Marvel. I'm not a comic book reader either way. Doesn't matter if it's DC or MCU. But I appreciated the background story of how Barry got his powers, explaining it to 18-year-old Barry, like, what's today? It's raining. Oh, today's the day I got my powers. So I need to get you here so that way you can get the powers. Yeah. Because I don't know what that means for me. If I don't have powers, I can't get back to my own timeline and that sort of thing. Like, so for me as a non-Flash, non-DC fan, getting that explanation was actually extremely helpful. It didn't take 5 hours to explain, which I really appreciate. But overall with the storyline, I think everything was done well and explained well and didn't need to drag. You didn't really have fluff, I guess, throughout this movie. I don't think you really even had like slow points throughout this movie.
No, this movie, I mean, the movie's called The Flash. It's moving. Like, it's a fast, I mean, I agree. It is kind of long, but like it's a movie that
it's a tad bit long.
But you don't realize that you leave like, oh my gosh, it's been almost 3, you know, it's a solid 2.5 hours, right? But
it paced well, it moved well, and y'all know me, like I if the movie does not pace well, like it's not going to hold me. It's not going to hold me. But like throughout this movie, from the get-go of him talking to the employee of, I guess, the coffee shop and coffee shop guy just wants to like chit chat, and he's like, dude, like give me my freaking sandwich, you know.
Right.
And in the meantime, he goes to Gotham
Yeah.
and saves, you know, what's going on. We also need to talk about that scene in Gotham because
let's talk about it.
Talk about that.
This scene, the opening scene, has a lot of great stuff. To me, it's got one of the weirdest things in the movie. But so let's get to it. Like you said, the way the movie opens is Barry's getting a sandwich. He gets called into action by Alfred, which it was great to have Jeremy Irons back. He's basically saying, "Look," Jeremy Irons is like, "Look, I need you to help because my first choice was Superman, but he's in Guatemala dealing with an earthquake. My other first choice was Wonder Woman, but I can't get her to pick up. And so now you're my first choice. Now you're my new first choice." And so then Barry goes, and Barry's like, he's like, I'm basically like I'm considered like the janitor of the Justice League. He's like, but I've noticed like I'm always cleaning up bat messes,
Yes, yep.
And he has to go to Gotham City to help Batman because there's an issue at the Martha Wayne Hospital. The foundation is blowing up because of this. The Falcone family has stolen a biological weapon and they're threatening to put it in the water. And so Barry is at the hospital trying to save people there. And then you've got Ben Affleck's Batman chasing after the Falcone kid.
By the way, that CGI did not look good either.
Which one?
Him on the motorcycle.
On the motorcycle. Oh, okay. I
did
liked
not
the
look good to
Bat-cycles.
me. Did not look good to me.
I liked, you see him coming out of the Flying Fox, hitting the ground running.
That's fine.
On the Bat-cycle.
It just didn't look good.
Okay, how about this? What did y'all think of? So I'll go to Drew first. What did you think of Ben Affleck's Batman suits? He wore the blue and gray, which we've never seen on screen. This is the first time ever on the big screen. What did you think about that suit compared with like other Ben Affleck versions of the character?
So before I go there, just real quick, I wish I could bring it up. I can't find it because I don't want to get distracted with my iPad over here. But a lot of DC talk about paying attention to the details. Did you notice when he said Superman was busy, he was actually at that island that that they were having the issue with? It was kind of like the Falkland Islands in the Dark Knight Returns when he says the name of the island.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is that same island. I'll look it up when y'all was talking. But that was an island where he's, obviously he wasn't settling the nuclear war thing there. He's taking the volcano, but I thought that was a neat throwback. I was just as a comic book reader, I'm like, oh, that's good props. I was wondering about that. When I saw Ben, I'm like, that is like, what is that bat suit? I actually thought it was cool. I'm like, boy, I mean, I know he's lifting weights in one of the Justice League versions, but I'm like, he said, like, it's kind of like when Ultron was juicing with the vibranium. Like, man, he's got a big badass suit going on there. So I was impressed. I liked it. So
yeah, I think this suit it's weird. Like it looked good in action, but then up close it looked kind of like on his face. It looked
better in
funny.
action, absolutely.
Yeah, it looked like, to me, like the suit looked fine, but then the cowl on his face, like from different angles, it looked kind of weird. Like it was.
I did. Yeah,
I was kind of that.
It looked heavily CGI like. It just did not look.
He wasn't wearing. Yeah, I agree with that.
It's like,
but
wait a minute, was Ben Affleck not available, and they just had to like superimpose his face on somebody? Like it just didn't look good.
He wasn't the guy on the bike. Obviously, that was a stuntman.
Well, I don't think he should be Batman as a whole, but here we are.
This was his final time playing Batman. So
good.
Yeah.
Anyway, beside the point.
No, what'd you think about the action? We're gonna break the scene now, but what'd you think about the Bat-cycle action, the chase through the city? Like they're firing at him, he's got his shields up, then he starts firing at them, and like then you see Batman like use the grappling gun and like almost kind of like flying or like gliding across to catch up with him. I thought it was a really cool action scene to start the movie.
Keaton was better. Just saying, Keaton's always going to be better. No, I mean, it's no secret. I'm not a Ben Affleck fan, and definitely not a Ben Affleck Batman fan. So it's fine. I mean, he served his purpose to be Batman in Gotham City, and thus you have Flash come in and clean up the mess that Batman has, made, and he's following Falcone and what have you. Fine, no big deal. It doesn't leave quite the lasting impression that Keaton would, but it's fine. No. He served his purpose.
Corto Maltese. That was
okay. There we go.
Yeah, that was a neat throwback to the homage to the comics. But
that's cool.
I agree with what Brittany said. I mean, he needed to be in action. It was definitely big screen Batman. You know, it was enough to get you excited to know what was coming. And, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about this at some point, but, you know, I think Michael Keaton Batman in this movie had a lot to do with making sure it draws the crowds in case, you know, I know
That's
that
the
was
whole
the
reason I saw it.
Yep. You know, a lot of people said that too. I was surprised I saw it. I didn't think you'd have as big as, I wasn't quite sure how big of a role he'd have because it was the Flash, not, you know, Batman and the Flash or something like that.
Right.
To your point, I hope I answered your question. I agree with Brittany. I liked that suit in action. I liked the action scenes because it got you ready for, you know, more Batman's coming, and in my honest opinion, better Batman's coming. So, yeah. But that opening scene had everything going on with considering that he's waiting for this guy to make the sandwich. Like you said, the hospital's imploding, and he's going to you know, my wife's a nurse and my daughter's a nurse in training, and I tease him a bit about, you know, they're in the I believe that's called the neonatal or the whatever the babies were. Yeah. So
nursery. The
nursery. So it was exactly how it would be if there's a trauma at the hospital, the door's locked down. So that poor nurse is in there in lockdown with all the infants. And then I'm like, the window's going to go. I'm like, you can see where that one was going. I'm like, this is going to be interesting. So I'll
listen, the babies and the therapy dog falling.
Well, do you know what the scene's called? It's called the baby shower scene, as Alfred and Barry coined that phrase. And that is such a bonkers scene. You know, I think it was meant to kind of like, it's similar to the Quicksilver speedster parts in the X-Men movies, and they tried to like up the ante.
Yeah.
And I thought it was, you know, it was very creative. But to me, the part where he puts one of the babies in the microwave, now he does that to protect the kid.
It's on. It's running because it dings at the very end when they've landed.
To me,
and
that
the baby's
was such
in there.
Strange,
So you can use a timer. You can use a timer in a microwave. My microwave does this where it can just be a timer and ding.
No. But there was a burrito in there.
Okay, so
he took the burrito out and put the baby in.
I thought that's what I saw. I thought maybe he hit stop or something. I was like, okay, so he didn't move the burrito. Oh boy.
Because you remember whenever the babies start falling out and Barry starts, you know, going, you know, into kind of like the mini Speed Force, and he's going fast. He's losing. He needs to refuel. He's low on calories, and
goes for the vending machine. There's babies falling. There's a dog falling.
Yeah, but he has to do that. But otherwise, like he'll lose his power. He won't have the power. Yeah. So, he makes the save.
Priorities.
Yeah, he makes the save. Goes to the vending machine. Then he has that burrito. Then he lines them all up in this like crazy order where he's able to save all of them, including the nurse, including the therapy dog. And then I thought it was funny afterwards. He's like, you know, and of course it's also strange given Ezra Miller has confessed that he has mental health issues. Then the line is, he tells the nurse like
help of a professional.
Yeah, he's like, the Justice League isn't very good at that right now. Trust me, I know. Yeah, so that was
wow.
That was kind of funny.
Bit on the nose.
Yeah, to me it worked except for the baby in the microwave because that's one of those things where it's just like you just wouldn't do that. And I know like
because there are people who have actually put their babies in microwaves and killed them like that. Like no, that was done in poor taste in my opinion.
Yeah, it was. I wouldn't have done that if I were directing the movie. I would have said let's figure out a different way. Like, you know. Now, granted, the microwave did there exactly. He dropped the candy bar. The microwave did protect the kid from the fire, but
sure,
as it was falling,
but it was still going.
That was I was like, I blew it off like it can't still be going. No.
The
ding at the end. I was like,
but see, it served its purpose. It made you forget about that until the moment it dinged, and then you're like, oh, there was a burrito that was warming up in there, and then he put the baby in there.
Yeah.
No, that's no.
I agree.
Yeah.
I don't want to move on. I don't want to think about it anymore. I'm sorry. Right.
So after that, we get, you know, we've mentioned this a little bit before, but let's just go ahead and finish the thought on it. So after that, then Barry joins up to see what Batman's up to. Batman, of course, has caught the Falcone kid, and they're hanging off the bridge. Of course, we hear the Wonder Woman music. She comes in, makes the save, the lasso of truth. Which I thought, you know, was very, you know, it's they had a similar joke played in the Justice League movie, the one that was in theater with Aquaman. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a lot of people who obviously don't like that movie because there's obviously the Snyder cut, but I think it's still a good joke, and I think it worked well in this movie to where Batman and the you know the Falcone guy, they have it on their wrist, and Batman's saying like, she's like, oh, you know, you're welcome. He's like, oh, you know, my ego's too big to say thank you to anybody. And all this kind of stuff. And then Barry gets involved and Barry has to say something silly about it. He's like, I know what
I know
sex is, but I've
sex
never experienced it or something.
exists.
Yeah.
But I've never
Yeah.
I've never experienced it. Oh
What
my
I liked
God.
about that though is it was like a quick, like mini team up of the Justice League.
Mhm.
And this universe, which it's almost like you can't even call it a universe, they didn't do enough of that stuff. Like the Justice League wasn't fun. Like the Avengers would team up, obviously the Avengers movie, but they would team up in other movies briefly. And that was part of the cool part of having an interconnected universe. But with these movies, they haven't been connected enough, and you've lost out on these moments where the characters just kind of had like a fun team up, like that. This movie gave us that real fast at the beginning. I liked it. What did you think about that, Drew?
I the first time I remember kind of seeing a fun team up was at the end of Peacemaker, right? With the Flash and Aquaman and the Scylla. But with James Gunn, and that's why I was asking how much influence, because that was, like I said, that was cool. I'm like, that movie hit top speed, hit the NOS, and then like having Gal Gadot. And is there a plan for a third Wonder Woman? I haven't researched it all. I mean, just the way she walked off, it kind of feels like there could be, but
there could be, but it doesn't sound like it. No,
Okay.
It sounds like honestly, all of this stuff is going to be rebooted.
Okay,
they're just going to start over with Superman Legacy with a new Superman, and just
So you guys know, just so everyone watching, I finally saw Fast 10 before this, so I'm like, well, I don't think there can be another woman because she's got to come back and help Cypher and Letty. So there can't be a Wonder Woman 3 anytime in the near future.
Right.
So
Right.
Wait a minute, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That's
Don't
okay.
spoil anything for me.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Spoilers alert. Okay. Anyways.
Yeah.
That's why.
Right.
I was like,
what?
I went off on a little tangent, but like I said to you both before, I saw Fast 10 the day before, so that was still fresh in my mind. But just seeing her was great. I mean, it was fun. It was the Last of Truth scene. I was honestly waiting for Aquaman to shoot out of the river at some point and do something silly too, and it got to that point. So yeah, I agree. It was enjoyable to see, and that early in the movie too. I'm like, that was a good kickoff.
Yeah. And speaking of the Justice League, one of my favorite scenes in the movie was, so Barry goes back to 2013. Obviously, he goes back to when Man of Steel was happening, right? Except for there is no Man of Steel.
Right.
So Zod is here, and so now Barry's like, well, we've got to find the Justice League. This is because we've got to find Superman. We got to find these people. And I love this scene where they're trying to find the Justice League, and he looks up Victor Stone, and he's like, oh, Victor's like some quarterback at Gotham University. So, he hasn't become Cyborg yet. And Wonder Woman is some magic, it's just some older lady who's like, doing magic or whatever. It's not Diana.
Right.
Then he calls up Thomas Curry, played by Tamora Morrison. And he's like, can I talk to Arthur, your son? He's like, you want to talk to my dog? He named the dog Arthur. And then it's like, but isn't your wife the Queen of Atlantis? And they pan to this woman on the couch. And he's like, no, she's, of course not, and like, I love that stuff. I love the realization that Barry's like, oh, I've created this universe where there's no metahumans, and then I have no help. And then he's like, there's no Batman. And then the female roommate, she's like, I'm Batman. And then he's like, what did you just say? And then he figures out that, oh, there is a Batman in this universe. We've got to go find him. I thought that was a great scene.
It's peculiar that in alternate universes that not every one of these superheroes actually exists. Like Aquaman doesn't exist, right. Cyborg doesn't exist, Wonder Woman. It's curious because when you compare that to, let's say, of Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange, there was always a Doctor Strange in every universe.
Right.
It just wasn't necessarily the same Doctor Strange that we have come to know. And I thought that was really interesting. Just a different take of how alternate universes, again, don't have the same superheroes. They don't carry the same people, period, it seems. Because we saw that Michael Keaton was one Batman. The Batman we know is, Ben Affleck. And then at the very end of it, it's a completely different Batman. Yeah. But back in the universe that Barry is from. So it's just kind of like, whoa, very interesting way of changing things up.
I think there's a whole theology of unit multiverses because I grew up with Marvel, the Marvel and the MCU version of multiverse where there is a version of somebody in that. So that's what threw me for a loop in this one. I thought, oh, that's a new perspective. I like the way they did it. Mm-hmm. I don't have an issue with it. DC can do what they want to do, and it keeps some good segregation between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
And
like
then
there was a Kal-El. It's just didn't.
But
he didn't make it. He didn't make
yeah,
it.
that was a neat way of playing it, and that was actually another thing with an infant. Something like the infant didn't make it. I'm like, oh my goodness, that was harsh because
Like, why are we killing off babies?
Yeah, exactly.
God.
But
Jesus.
No,
it's just,
I thought it's a great take, a great mix up from what they did in Flashpoint. Instead of having Superman found by the government, you have Kara Zor-El, Superman's cousin, who was sent to Earth to protect. She's actually older than Superman, but
that is Supergirl, right, from the series.
Right, that's Supergirl, right?
Right.
Kara Zor-El, Supergirl. But the way it usually works out in the comics is that Kal-El arrives on Earth before she does,
right?
And because of the way they age, he's actually older than her by the time she reaches Earth. So, but in this one, obviously, they reach around the same time, I guess, and then, or no, he never reaches Earth because Zod, intercepts it. Yeah, and however, she does, and then she's caught up in this Siberian prison facility and kept out of the light because obviously she's powered by the yellow sun, just like Superman, and she's a very dangerous character. And I thought Sasha Calle, this is her big screen debut. I thought she was great. I thought she looked great. I thought the suit looked awesome. I mean, she was very imposing, beating up on Zod and the other Kryptonians. Brittany, what'd you think of Sasha Calle as Superman?
Not entirely impressed.
Really? Okay.
It's kind of a solid meh. Like, I didn't quite leave a lasting impression on me.
Okay.
And maybe because of the fact that she didn't have like such a huge role in this movie. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what hour point we meet her for the very first time. Obviously, you understand her level of badassness because she is Kryptonian. She's cousin to Superman. She looks great in the suit. Don't get me wrong. That looked really cool. It's just a solid meh for me. I don't dislike her. But I'm also not like fawning over her either, I guess you could say. I've never seen her before. If you're saying this is her big debut, basically into the movie world, good for her. Great. Yeah. I like the short kind of haircut that she's got with like the longer, front. You can call it a lob if you will, but just not quite lasting impression on me. Sorry.
It does look like she would be Henry Cavill's. If Henry Cavill's Superman, which he is in this universe, it does look like she would be his Supergirl. You know what I'm saying? Like, it looks like they would be related to me. I think they did a good job with casting. And the part where, she asked Zod about, the infant, she's like, "What did you do?" And he's like, "The infant did not survive." And then she
ferocity,
I
felt. I've definitely felt that because she takes her charge very serious, obviously, of protecting him. He's the last son of Krypton. And she felt it. Like, I couldn't protect him because obviously Zod intercepted. So I felt that ferocity. So that was great. But at the same time, it's just like, and quite honestly, I feel like you probably could put anyone in that role and I'd maybe feel the same way.
But okay, so she dies a couple of times because the berries, go back and they try to fix it. The first time she died, though, just like the first time Keaton died, I was surprised. I was like, whoa, because I thought they were going to possibly continue because they actually were. And I'll get to that in a little bit.
Right.
But Drew, what did you think about Supergirl? And what did you think about the first time she dies against Zod? Because that was a pretty shocking moment in the film.
The first two deaths were shocking. Yeah. I'm like, okay, because that's why I was wondering where this was going. And I'm like, how do you pronounce her name? Sasha. I was thinking with it, Sasha, with her ferocity, and now that she's in theory dead, I hope they look her up for one of the like X-Men Rogue as a cast member, because she'd be a badass. She'd be a badass female member of the X-Men. I'll tell you that. She was in great shape. And she plays a good, intense, super female. So again, it shocked me. And then I was wondering how they're going to go back, because they're going to try to fix it, right? I'm like, and every time they just couldn't get it right. I'm like, oh man. So
yeah,
it was.
Go ahead.
It almost seemed like,
I was surprised both of them passed.
Yeah.
And that Keaton says, let you got to let it go, kid.
He's like, you already brought me back. I thought that was such a great line. He's like, you already did. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I thought it was interesting with the berries going back in time again further to try to save both of them. Then I thought, okay, they're going to be able to save one, but not the other. But then repeatedly they could not save both, which I was like, okay, so this is the inevitable timeline that Keaton had talked about
that world was just faded. It was fated to end. There was no stopping. That was the fulcrum point. That world was just going to die. Zod was going to win because there was no Superman. Like,
where's the TVA? I mean, they should have just like come in and like intercepted and be like, "Yo, you're fucking up everything here. Like, quit it."
We need that crossover. Just I get maybe
we need that Owen Wilson. Wow.
Yeah. Maybe one of the last things we'll say about Sasha Calle is they are making a Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow movie. And James Gunn DCU. I don't know that she's going to be considered for the role. I think she should be, but I can understand. I can understand why she wouldn't be, because she's a part of this DCEU, which is basically failed. Which it pains me to say that because I love these characters, but it hasn't worked out. I mean, the Flash box office this weekend was just an example of like it just. I mean, it made half the amount of money the first weekend as a Quantumania. So that just shows you how far that they're down. Go ahead.
You think we're at that point, at that fulcrum, where no matter how many times we go back in time, we're not saving this DCU and it's time to move on? Justin,
you know what?
I'm starting to get that feeling. Now that the more we talk about this, I'm like, this is kind of interesting.
I think you're right. I think the DCU is just fated to fail. It's just that's just the way it is. And you know what? We got great stuff, and it'd be cool if certain people can continue, like Jason Momoa or Gal Gadot. I don't know that any of them are going to continue, or if they do continue, they're going to be playing different characters. Who knows? Like, but that's a good point, Drew. I think it's just destined to fail. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just like, wow, here we are sitting.
Let General Zod come in and just obliterate this DCEU. I mean,
and what you talk
as a whole.
You know, this movie had some harsh points with some of the infant stuff, but like that, where the Flash talks about the scene of saying, you know, when it showed it a bit back in 2013 in Man of Steel, but the terraforming, like when he can't save the kid's dad, but when he's banging the earth down and killing people, like, holy cow, that was intense. And you know, that had some James Gunn, you know, violence and blood and guts kind of feel through that. So I was asking how much role he had in it, but apparently not too much, like you're saying. But it just was intense. So none. So
one other quality that Flash had that I don't recall from prior movies, again, don't follow closely enough, the phasing. Was that something that he was able to do?
That's his
prior.
Power.
Okay,
it's one of his powers. Yeah.
It's one of his powers. Okay, I was just like, wait, that came out of left field for me.
You know what? Now that I think, I can't really think about it. I can't really remember it in the movies, but that is known power.
Okay,
like the TV series, like obviously.
But it's not something we've seen Ezra Miller's.
I don't we saw him do that.
This was the first time doing that. That was interesting.
Because the only thing I remember him doing was in, I guess it was Justice League, breaking the speed of light or whatever it was, the speed force or whatever he calls it. That's the only thing I recall. So when I first saw the phasing with the beers, you know, he's entertaining Iris in his apartment. Of course, he speed cleans everything, and that just, you know, comes to shit anyway, falls out of the cabinet. But he phases into the wall and brings back, you know, beer, and I'm just like, I don't remember him being able to do that like from previous movies. So I thought that was kind of like a whoa sort of situation. But that ended up being really funny, especially for younger Barry. It's like, Barry, I need you to stand on this like manhole, you know, thing, and then phase. And so he quickly phases, and then you just hear like a thud. He's like, ow. It's like, let other Barry finish his sentence before you do something, bro. Like, chill out.
He's in the Batcave. Yeah. Speaking of Barry's powers, let's talk about when he runs back in time and he enters the Speed Force, and then he enters a place they call the Chrono Bowl, which I believe is something they made up for this movie. And in the Chrono Bowl, basically Barry runs back through his memories. That's why you see all these people, his family, you know, when he goes back and you know, make sure his mom lives, you see all these memories that are new now of him having birthdays with his mom and him learning to shave with his dad and all these kind of things through his life. And that's what we see later on in the movie when the multiverse, these worlds are collapsing in the multiverse, right? And you're in the.
By the way, why are they the same colors as the Infinity Stones?
Well, I mean, like I did like the showing of these worlds because it reminds me of like Crisis on Infinite Earths, where all these Earths in the comic books, they're colliding, and you're basically that's what DC did back then is they got it down to where they'd only had one timeline. They had all these Earths smashed together, and instead of having all these different versions of Batman and Superman, they had one timeline of characters, which I think was a cool idea. Of course, that's not the case anymore. And Marvel has kind of had ways to solve their issues that are similar. But when he's speeding through the Chrono Bowl, and we find out that basically 2013's world is going to fail no matter what, and the younger Barry won't give up. He's like no one dies, and he's going to keep trying and trying. And he's slowly becoming the Dark Flash, the villain, the true villain of the movie. But because young Barry keeps going back in time, he keeps messing with space time, and these worlds are collapsing, and we see all these great cameos. And I know people have been critical of these cameos, but let's run through them. I thought it was really cool. You see a black and white planet with George Reeves, who was Superman back in the 50s. You see a shot of Jay Garrick, who is the first Flash. Now, the actor that they show, it hasn't been released who that actor is, but some people think it's one of the CW actors. But then the CW actors come out and said, "No, that's not me," or I didn't film that at all. So
he's like, "I know I'm sleep deprived because I'm a new dad, but I don't remember filming anything."
Right,
which was funny.
Of course, we get Christopher Reeve's Superman, which Christopher Reeve is like Superman. We see Helen Slater's Supergirl, which those two were from the same universe, although they didn't interact with each other in the movies, because there was one Supergirl movie. There's 4 of the Christopher Reeve movies. Then
it was so nice to see Christopher Reeves. That was really cool.
We see Adam West's Batman. We hear Cesar Romero's Joker laugh from the 1960s Batman movie. And then, of course, we get to Nicolas Cage's Superman.
I was out of the loop on that one, Justin.
Okay, so I'm going to explain this to everybody.
Cool.
Nicolas Cage was supposed to play Superman in a movie called Superman Lives in the late 90s. It was going to come out like in 1998.
Okay.
It was supposed to be directed by Tim Burton. It was going to star Nicolas Cage as Clark Kent Superman. Jimmy Olsen was going to be played by Chris Rock. The movie was going to be written by Kevin Smith. It's got a crazy story. The movie never happened, obviously. It fell through. There's a great documentary called The Death of Superman Lives. I think it's on YouTube. Okay. Definitely check that out. It's very entertaining. But you notice Nicolas Cage is Superman, and he's fighting a giant spider. And the reason why he's fighting a giant spider is because in Superman Lives, in the final act, he was supposed to fight a giant spider because the person who owned the rights to Superman was a man named John Peters. John Peters is famously known. He became famous because he was Barbra Streisand's hairdresser. And somehow in the 1990s, he acquired the movie rights to Superman. So if you watch Superman movies or content, you see his name credited as an executive producer on a lot of stuff. On Man of Steel, on Batman v Superman, you'll see John Peters' name. So John Peters, though, had this crazy idea where he wanted Superman. He didn't want Superman to fly. He didn't want Superman to be in the suit, but he wanted Superman to fight a giant spider at the end of the movie. That was like his dream. So Kevin Smith tells a great story about it. You can find on YouTube where like that's the 3 requirements the guy had. The movie didn't happen.
Now, when you say Kevin Smith, you mean like Jay and Silent Bob?
Jay and Bob's Kevin Smith.
Clerks Kevin Smith. Okay.
Right.
Wow.
So
wow.
He
That's
wrote the
crazy.
movie. Yeah, it's supposed to be a Tim Burton movie. The costume designs are crazy. It's almost like Edward Scissorhand meets Superman. Like some of the character designs.
Fan-fucking-tastic.
It's insane. But the spider, what's funny is, so Superman Lives didn't happen, obviously. But then a couple years later, there was a movie called Wild Wild West with Will Smith. And it's also executively produced by John Peters. And who does Will Smith fight at the end of that movie?
Oh my God, there was a giant spider. It was a metal spider.
So this guy's dream came true years later.
Jeez.
He had like
that
this
movie
thing.
did well that summer too. That was a
really
blockbuster
did,
that summer. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
Kevin Kline and
then the
Kevin
South Park
Kline,
takeoff.
Kenneth Branagh,
yeah.
Salma Hayek,
Yeah.
Will Smith.
So what
That's
did y'all
crazy.
think about all these crazy cameos and this these worlds collapsing in the multiverse?
I was good up until thank you for I didn't understand Nicolas Cage. Knowing what I was gonna be on now, I chose not to look it up over the weekend. So thanks for that. I knew there was an answer out there and you had it, Justin. So
you know what? Look into it though, because it's so amazing.
Okay.
It's such a funny story. If you can find Kevin Smith talking about it, it's like a stand-up routine because he talks about how crazy this guy is. And I think the guy's still alive, John Peters. But anyway, it's a crazy story.
Yeah.
Brittany, what are your thoughts on seeing Christopher Reeve and seeing all these iconic versions of these DC characters basically it's a tribute to these characters.
It's an homage. It's an homage
Yeah.
to these well-known actor who play these iconic characters, of course. I mean, Christopher Reeves is, I think, for the majority of us, our Superman. I mean, that's who I knew growing up.
Yeah.
My dad absolutely loves the Christopher Reeves movies. I'm not the biggest Superman fan. I mean, in general, like, just I'm not a big DC fan in general, of course. But Christopher Reeves is just iconic because he's Superman and the legacy that he's left behind, obviously. And what floored me, of course, was Nicolas Cage, or Coppola, as I like to often remind people. He is a Coppola. But he the hair, Jesus Christ, like the hair was just ridiculous to me. And oh my gosh, like I couldn't take it serious at that point. I'm just like, oh my God, like is this just like the future of DC? Because again, a lot of it, is unknown at this point now that James Gunn and Peter Safran have taken over. I was just like, oh God in heaven, please don't let, Nicolas Cage be Superman, because I'm never going to go see a DC anything ever again. Not that I don't like Nicolas Cage. I love Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
It's just how I feel if Tom Cruise was Iron Man. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just,
it's a very similar. You're right.
It's very similar.
It's a good 1-to-1. I agree with that.
Yes. It's just like, no, absolutely not. No. But now having the explanation of Nicolas Cage and how he kind of fits into this whole thing is it's comical, of course. But once again, we get the nods to the different Supermans. You get the silhouette of Cavill, even though we didn't get Cavill in that silhouette. However, we did see him in that dome,
the Chrono Bowl,
that thing. We did see Cavill in that respect, which I thought was great. The fact that you got to see all these different versions of Superman and the different versions of Batman, albeit with respect to Val Kilmer, we didn't see him in this because obvious reasons, Val Kilmer.
And honestly, the Batman 89 through Batman and Robin, they're really playing the same Batman, because everybody else in that universe is the same. Although now people kind of have separated it, and I understand that, but it's all kind of meant to be the same Batman. Clooney, Kilmer, and Keaton are supposed to be the same guy in a lot of respects. Yeah.
They are, but the fact of the matter is, with the exception of even Christian Bale, because Christian Bale is like a completely different Batman. Obviously.
No, that's definitely.
But you literally had all the Batmans except Val Kilmer, and understandably so. Understandably so. I mean, he's. I know he made a cameo in Top Gun.
Right, he did.
But
it was very cool.
Obviously, he's just not. He's not well. I mean, he's had a lot happen in his life, and with throat cancer and things like that. So it was cool that we got like the different Batmans. Would have been great to have Kilmer if things were different, but it was cool. It was a cool homage to have witnessed all that. Yeah,
it's very cool. And as Yesenia points out, Nicolas Cage is a huge Superman fan. He named his kid Kal-El. He has a crazy collection of Superman comics. There's actually a podcast out called Saving Superman, or I think it's called Saving Superman. It's basically about how Nicolas Cage had this very rare Superman comic that was stolen from him, and it was like a 10-year odyssey to find it. So check that out. Did they ever find it? It was found, but I don't think it
was it returned to him.
Well, he ended up selling it later on in an auction.
Oh, well then,
to get rid of it. Yeah, but he did get it back. Anyway, Brittany, before we leave the cameos, I want to talk about a quick cameo that I told you to look for. I don't know if Drew even noticed this one, but there was a Game of Thrones actor who's quickly thrown in this movie. Brittany, tell us about it.
Yeah. So, and Justin, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's the right point. It's at night. 18-year-old Barry has just gotten his powers, and he's just having the time of his life. He's running around the apartment. He's blue lightning charge, whatever, and he's going to go test out his powers and not listen to mature Barry, right? And so, with all that being said, 18-year-old Barry's running through. Where is it that they even live?
Central City.
Okay, I don't know these things, y'all. Sorry. Running through Central City, and of course, he's moving, speed of light, whatever, and sees a man with a hot dog. Man with the hot dog is about to, bite down on his hot dog. But Barry, of course, high metabolism. He's hungry. He's going to take it. He's going to, try to eat it. Fails. That gentleman there is none other than Jamie fucking Lannister.
There you go.
That, my friends, is Nikolai Coster-Waldau.
That's what I thought it.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost hard to tell because he has like a 4-second like on screen,
and it's a side profile too versus the.
Well, but he's got like a beanie on. He's got the facial hair.
Cool.
You know, he's not wearing gold. He's not a golden lion anymore. He has both hands. He has both hands this time. But yeah, he definitely is. He makes a cameo in this in this movie.
And so he is friends with Andy Muschietti, who is the director. He was also in one of Andy Muschietti's movies, Mama, which I've not seen, which is also a horror movie. And at the premiere for this movie last Monday, he wore a blazer with a bright yellow shirt, leading people to believe that he might be the Reverse Flash in the future because the Reverse Flash wears yellow. Now,
interesting.
Now, who knows if there even is a future for this Flash, because who knows what James Gunn's going to do, but that's the talk that he might be the Reverse Flash in the future if there is a Reverse Flash. But so I thought that was very cool. Moving on real quick. I know, Brittany, you might have to get out of here shortly. So I want to touch on something very important. Let's get to the end. The surprise ending of the movie. Barry finds a way to save his dad. He moves the tomato cans when he goes back in time, which he messes with time again. But that's why at the end of this movie, you know, he's obviously able to get his dad out of prison. His mom is still killed because that's a fulcrum point that has to happen. Barry's at the courthouse. He gets a call from Bruce Wayne. He thinks it's Ben Affleck, who's his friend, his mentor. He can't wait to see him. Batman pulls up, fancy car, door opens, and it's none other than George Clooney. And my favorite line in the movie, Barry Allen looks at it, he's like, who the fuck is that? Like, that got the biggest laugh. I saw the movie 4 times. It got a huge laugh every single time.
Oh, yeah.
George Clooney, who played Batman in Batman and Robin 1997, which was
the worst one.
One of the worst movies. I think George Clooney is great in the movie. I think he's fine as Batman. But that movie's not good.
He regrets having taken that role.
He does say that.
Which I think is so funny that he came back to do this cameo.
Yep. Right. So
hilarious.
Give me your reaction, Drew, when you saw George Clooney as Batman now in this alternate. Barry thinks he went back to his universe, but obviously it's a changed universe.
I honestly expected Michael Keaton, a clean cut Michael Keaton, to come out of there, because I thought with everything in the timelines and the fulcrum points, I expected Michael Keaton and kind of like, open the fucking door from the Guardians of the Galaxy. All I could think of was, if Brittany sees this, I could think of just the way he said that. I just laughed because that has that same use of the F word that I can only imagine if he's out 4 times.
Get in the fucking car. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, whatever that is. Get the fuck. Yeah.
It's a PG-13 movie. You're allowed one F word.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was hilarious. Like, who the fuck? It reminded me of Major League too. Like, who the hell are these guys? Like, who the fuck is that? Because Ezra Miller's gonna have no idea, right? In theory. So that was entertaining. But I know Brittany's on timeline, so go to her, please.
I mean, that floored me, of course, because I think, raise your hand if you thought it was going to be Michael Keaton that walked out of that car. I mean, two hands, right?
Yeah, right.
Because it definitely sets it up that way. You lose him in the alternate timeline, and then you're just like, oh, cool, like you're going to get him back in this timeline. But no, you know what? It totally makes sense that because Barry altered the outcome for his mom in going back in time, that one, yes, it meant that he got to save his dad, because for those who weren't aware, Barry's dad was accused of having murdered his wife, been in jail for all that time. And then, the footage, thanks to Bruce Wayne, that had been enhanced, proved that the father was innocent. His alibi was true. And so that was great that obviously his dad got to get out of jail, but then that meant that the Batman and the Bruce Wayne that he knows is not the same one that he knows. So what would that mean for the rest of the Justice League? What would that mean for Diana Prince, for Arthur Curry, Victor, whatever his name is, Stone. He still, regardless, you mess with one thing in one timeline, you're going to change your future. Like that was something that Michael Keaton Batman had explained. And that was a great surprise. I like I said, the first thought in my head was George Clooney regretted having taken on the role of Bruce Wayne Batman back in the day, and to bring him back, hilarious.
Brittany, we talked about this one time recently. I told you, you talked about how he regretted it, but I told you he'd do it again, and he he did it again. Now
You're right.
Now this time it was kind of as a cameo, kind of meant to be a joke. But let me real quickly, I want to tell you all about this. So we all talked about how we thought it was Michael Keaton. Well, this movie had 3 different endings before the Clooney ending. The original ending of the movie, Michael Keaton gets out of the car, and then Supergirl arrives at the courthouse, and they start up their new Justice League, and she says, "Are you ready?" Because they actually have that in one of the trailers, or she's like, "Are you in?" or something. So that was the original ending of the movie. Then, whenever it was announced that Cavill was coming back, they reshot it, and in the second version, Keaton once again as Batman gets out of the car. Supergirl shows up. Henry Cavill's Superman, he shows up. And Wonder Woman also joins them at the courthouse. And they're like the new Justice League going forward. And in this version, there was going to be a post-credit scene that shows Ben Affleck's Batman lost in the multiverse, and he calls out to Barry for help. I think that would have been cool, honestly. I think both these are cool ideas. The third option was, and people who saw some screenings, I saw a free screening, but mine actually showed the Clooney part. There was another version of the screening where the door opens to the car and it just goes to black, and you hear Barry go, "Who the fuck is that?" And the movie just ends.
Would be wild. Yeah.
That's what people saw at CinemaCon back in April when this movie was shown there. And a lot of people like that version better than the Clooney thing.
That would have left it open for a sequel.
It left it open for anybody. Yeah. But I do like the Clooney thing. I do like how then Barry's tooth popped out, because obviously he lost his tooth early in the movie. I just think it's kind of a funny thing. I enjoyed it, but let us know in the comments section which ending you would have preferred: Keaton and Supergirl, Keaton, Supergirl, Superman and Wonder Woman, or no one, just it going to black, or the Clooney version. So there's 4 options.
So before I head out,
I
do have to ask you, Justin, and you, Drew, as well, because I know Justin felt very strongly about this when we watched Shazam: Fury of the Gods, how the kids were like losing their powers back and forth. How did you feel about Barry losing his power when 18-year-old Barry was gaining his powers?
That happens in Flashpoint, although there's only one Barry in Flashpoint. When Barry goes back in time in Flashpoint, the comic, he loses his power, and Batman, Thomas Wayne's Batman, has to help him get the power back. And it's the same thing. He helps him get, a kite and lightning, and he gets struck by lightning. That's how he gets his powers back. There's no Supergirl in the comic book. So I expected him to lose his power, so I wasn't surprised by that.
Okay.
Real quick, Brittany, I didn't know what was going to happen, that was going to happen. As soon as I saw him, the young one, get it, and the existing Flash get hit, I'm like, I bet any money he lost his powers, and now we got to spend 15 to 45 minutes getting his powers back, and then the movie can continue with 2 Flashes with equal powers. But it made sense when I saw the lightning go through both. I'm like, I'm betting any money. And real quick, I know you gotta go, Brittany, but was it Superman 3 where he did something and became like bad Superman, but at the end he actually goes back in time and I had some things of that with all the time travel in here too, and the homages, those homage scenes with Christopher Reeve and all that. So but that's my answer for you, Brittany. It was I saw it once I saw him go through both. I'm like, I bet any money he's lost powers. Now we got to work on this for the next 15-20 minutes. So
I mean, it made sense. It made sense because in the follow-up of Barry trying to phase through the wall, and then he just slams right into it, and him, doing his little stance to get ready to run super fast, and then just see how funny he looks, like with the long strides. It was just like, wow, you look goofy as hell running. And he's like, I'm slow. That was great.
The humor point, that a lot of the unexpected humor in this movie, that was definitely one of the scenes I did that was hilarious.
Exactly. And I think, again, Ezra as an actor just does the job very well and can really embody that. Outside of that, no comment.
Hey, Brittany, before you get out of here, I want to get your thought. What did you think of the post-credit scene with Barry talking to Aquaman about what happened in the movie, about how there's all these people that they're all Batman, but they're different, and Aquaman's drunk. He falls down on the sidewalk, and he's like in the puddle, and he's like, Barry, this is my home, or whatever. Like, what did you think about that post-credit scene?
It was one of those that, like, I really didn't think about it until you kind of reminded me that there is an Aquaman 2 coming out at the end of this year. It's just kind of serving that reminder of like, hey guys, like, we're not done. We do have another movie. We do have one of the originals that you've come to know and love. Otherwise, I would have just felt like this is just literally the one thing in the movie that did not need to be in the movie. Like, if we didn't have a mid-credit, we only had the post credit. It's like, if you didn't have any mid or post, I would have been fine with it if it just ended the way that it did, because I think it told that great story of, hey, like Barry kind of had to make that ultimate sacrifice in a way of letting his mom go. And great, his dad got out of jail, but yet he still altered time and what have you. Could have ended it that way and no post credit needed. It felt like it really didn't serve a purpose because, but it's like you had told me, it's there to remind you that, hey, Aquaman's coming out.
Yeah.
So,
and Drew, you know, you asked me earlier about what James Gunn, the impact he had on this movie. So I know for sure he's the one that chose Clooney for the ending.
Okay.
And he also did he wanted the post-credit scene done because they actually shot this post-credit scene around the same time they shot the post-credit scene for Peacemaker, which also, I mean, the cameo for Peacemaker, which included obviously Barry Allen and Aquaman. Okay. So yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, y'all.
Okay,
right,
Brittany.
peace out.
Good to see you, Brittany. Take care.
See you later.
Thanks for having me, I guess, Brittany.
Yep.
See you soon.
Yeah.
So Drew, what were your thoughts on the post-credit scene?
So, you know, I had just finally got caught up on seeing Fast 10 the day before. So I had a little Dante on the brain. I'm like, oh, here's Jason Momoa again. But I thought it was funny. And I've just had the feel of don't forget there's an Aquaman coming. You know, there's one last, and if it's anything like the first one, and again, I thought The Flash was a very entertaining movie, and it's worth seeing if you like superheroes and if you liked anything of the Justice League. Any of the versions of it, you know, so it made sense. It was funny. We were talking about some of the cameos earlier. Tamora Morrison, I kept thinking about the Book of Boba Fett there for a couple seconds too, you know, and it's seeing, you know, an actor from other series, like, wow, just all these things together in the pop culture that we, you know, enjoy and that you've been kind enough to have me as a guest on. But, you know, it was fun. It was entertaining, but then to me, it just felt like, don't forget there's Aquaman 2 coming out. So,
yeah. Yeah, I think that's the sole purpose, was just to remind people that, hey, there's another movie coming out. And, you know, Aquaman, the first one, did make $1 billion. It's the only one in the DCEU to make $1 billion. So I don't think the second one's going to make $1 billion, but I'm not rooting against it. I'll see the movie.
Right.
And
I'll see it.
I'm looking forward to it. But it's just weird because there was a lot of talk that, like, maybe Jason Momoa's character would continue in the DCU, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen now. And it seems like they're going to start over, and he might play Lobo, which is a super.
I heard about that.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah.
Heard about that.
So that may be the way to go. Because I think, you know, obviously you referenced his role in Fast 10 as Dante. He's so good in that movie.
Yep.
I think keeping him around, I think playing Lobo would be awesome. If he's not going to be Aquaman, at least he's still a part of the DC family in some way. So I'm interested to see what happens with Jason Momoa and honestly all these characters, because, you know, I like these characters. That's why I like these movies. And while the DCEU pales in comparison to the MCU, I do think that they did cast these characters pretty well for the most part. And, you know, the fact that they have a multiverse means that you can do anything you want to. Right. And also DC has a it's called Elseworlds. It's like their black label.
Okay.
You know, like the Batman with Robert Pattinson.
Right.
That's an Elseworlds tale. The Joker movies, those are Elseworld tales. To me, like, it would make sense to do an Elseworld with Michael Keaton back as like a Batman Beyond, where he mentors somebody, or even to continue this version of the Flash as an Elseworld. I think that would be really interesting. I don't know if that's going to happen, but to me, that's the only way I see these characters continuing in DC, if it's some kind of Elseworld multiverse tale and not a part of the new universe.
Yeah. You know, and we both like superheroes, and we both grew up, you know, just a decade older than you, but we both grew up reading them. And, you know, you remember, if you think about Superman, I believe was the first superhero to make it to the big screen, you know, and that was a big deal. Right. And then the Superman, Christopher Reeve Supermans were all very entertaining. You know, and then, you know, Marvel, I was thinking about that the other day. My kids got me a very cool Father's Day cards. You know, everybody has their favorite superhero, has got a picture of Iron Man, Thor, the Hulk, and Daredevil. And of course, as our favorite is Dad. I meant to bring that up, but, you know, you think about that with everything you read, it's like, it's just like you have your superheroes. And, you know, I know a lot of people are knocking the Flash. But I go back to when I had to read comics, and I've said this and some of the other things, to see these things on the big screen and the people are taking the time and effort. They don't feel half-assed. I mean, I know there were some issues with some of the movies, but if you look at for just a pure, Man of Steel, I enjoyed that movie, and it took some, like that part in that where that trucker's messing with him, and he knows he's bigger and stronger, but messes with the trucker's truck and like that. Those are the things. The Christopher Reeve Superman, he was a nice Superman, but he also touched a little bit of the darker side of Superman. Like, I could really mess this human up, but I'll mess with his other things just to show how powerful I am. It's just, I've enjoyed all this because it has covered things in my mind that I've always wanted to see on the big screen. And, Marvel has done a fantastic job, and even the lessers at the shows and series have been good. I still enjoy every one of the DCUs that I've seen since, I'm trying to think, 2013 was the first one, right? With Man of Steel
kicked off this universe. Yep. So
and Batman vs Superman wasn't great, but it was still fun.
It was fun. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an entertaining movie, no doubt about it. There are some really great moments in the movie, but there's a lot of stuff that also just doesn't work.
I get it.
It's uneven.
But you just gotta, you know me. I try to pull out the good stuff and find the lemon and lemonade, the vodka, and have a party, right? So you just gotta make the good stuff. And the Flash is very enjoyable. And like I tell people, if you liked either version of Justice League, you're gonna like the Flash. And then some of the extra things at the end. I think the ending is what made it for me too, because that shocked me. I expect Mel Keaton, and you listen to the voice on the phone. I didn't have time because I don't want to keep Brittany on, but it didn't sound like Ben Affleck. I'm like, is that Mike? Whose voice is that? Like they muffled it enough. It's like you knew it wasn't Ben Affleck, but it's like, who is it going to be? So,
the first time I saw it, I thought it was Michael Keaton.
I did too.
And then, of course, I've seen the movie 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
The second time, the second, third, and fourth time, I was really listening, and it does sound like Clooney, but it still kind of sounds like Michael Keaton. But you're right; it doesn't sound like Affleck at all.
Right,
so
you kind of knew something was up, but not what was up exactly. I mean, the tooth falling out was classic. That was a good part to the, that was hilarious. So
I just kind of left it on a kind of a joke ending, and I thought it worked really well. But speaking of Affleck a second ago, this is basically. Who knows what'll happen with a multiverse kind of thing in the future with movies or whatever, but this was kind of seen as Ben Affleck's final time as Batman. And he's been very public with his comments about how much he enjoyed this version of Batman. He was like, it took me, this is like my 4th or 5th try, but I finally figured out the character. And I really thought that he did a great job in this movie. I thought the Batman stuff at the beginning we talked about where he's in the blue and great suit, and it was very much like a Saturday morning cartoon version of Batman saving the day. I thought that was well done. Then I also thought the part where he's talking to Barry, and he could tell he's Barry's friend, he's Barry's mentor, and he's telling Barry Barry says, I could go back, I could save my parents, I could save your parents, and then Ben Affleck tells him, he's like, yeah, but you could destroy everything, and these scars we have are what make us, and he's like, you're not broken. You shouldn't look at yourself. I thought that was a really great scene. Yeah. What did you think about Ben Affleck as Batman? We talked about Keaton a lot, but what did you think about Affleck as Batman as well? In this movie? Yeah.
I think he matured as a Bruce Wayne. I agree. I mean, Batman as Robert Pattinson, so you can put on a suit, do some good moves, and say a couple of good one-liners. But the Bruce Wayne element is and managing your two sides of your life. I mean, Michael Keaton did it well in the beginning. And I think, you look in Batman vs Superman, and I'm trying to think whatever, and Justice League too, he's really hitting the weights and some of the stuff too. He's doing the human side because Batman, he's like he tells the Flash, and I think Justice League, my superpowers? I'm really rich, right?
Right.
But to the point of US, I think this was a good point of maturity for managing. There wasn't, you saw a lot more Bruce Wayne than you actually did Batman. You saw him in the opening scene, in the action part, which was fun and got your excitement and adrenaline going. But then I had mentioned earlier in our podcast day too, I enjoyed when he's talked to Barry and took on mentor and friendship and all that kind of stuff. So, and then when you talked about the prequel comic, that only made sense because you saw that, someone was going to help, he definitely helped him as a person as well as a superhero.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've the thing is, like I said, I've always kind of been critical of DCEU, but I've always liked the casting of Ben Affleck as Batman, Bruce Wayne. And I think he's physically the biggest Batman we've seen. And like you've talked about, you're right. In Batman v Superman, he's all jacked up and they show him hitting the weights and everything. Yep. And he really does kind of bring that Dark Knight, Dark Knight Returns kind of version of Batman to life. And I think his Batman suit in BVS is one of the best ones. I mean, I think the Michael Keaton one also is really great too. But I think he's always embodied Batman, but I think he really felt like Batman in a short period of time in this movie. But I think he really nailed it. And I want to point out something that I thought was really interesting is, the last thing that Ben Affleck says to Barry Allen is Barry asks him, like, he's saying, or Barry says, he's like, but like, your tragedy made you a hero. And he said, yeah, but it also made me alone.
Yes.
And then Barry says, well, hey, we could hang out. Let's hang out. And Ben Affleck says, no, maybe some other time. He says, maybe some other time. Okay. So when Michael Keaton dies in Barry's arms, Barry says, he's like, we can't save you. Can we? He says, no, you already did. And then Michael Keaton also says something about maybe some other time or whatever. They both say a very similar thing. Both Batman say the same thing the final times Barry sees him. And I think that was really well done. And that, who knows, maybe that, would have led to something in the future.
Right.
With both of them returning, and who knows, maybe in the future they will in some kind of multiversal thing. But I thought that was really creative and clever that both of them said, like, their last words to Barry Allen were maybe some other time.
Right.
And obviously Barry Allen is someone who could travel through time. So
and I picked up on that too. And the other thing is, like, this movie was really almost all done in 2021, right? So this was before the James Gunn. So there could have been paths that might have happened. So I'm glad you brought that up for the listening and watching audience. But and I think it just leaves a door open that never say never, right? So
yeah. I mean, who would have thought, like, we would ever see Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man again, and then he pops up in No Way Home. So
I never thought we'd see Michael Keaton as Batman again in my life.
No, you're right. That's even better. Like, I never thought we'd ever see him, and 31 years later, he's Batman. And the unfortunate part is he actually filmed a lot more stuff for DC that will never see the light of day.
Right.
He was in Batgirl. He's a mentor to Batgirl in that movie, and we're never going to see that. And then also he filmed a post-credit scene or a cameo scene for Aquaman that they'd gotten rid of.
Bummer.
Because that was before James Gunn and them came on. And it's like I mentioned before, in the original ending of the movie, it was not Clooney, it was Keaton. And Keaton was going to continue on as Batman in this universe, even though Barry knows that, like, Affleck is lost somewhere in the multiverse. Keaton is now serving as the Batman of his world. So that could have been really cool, honestly. I think that I would have liked to have seen that now that I've heard about that and thought about it. I think that's probably the way to go. But if the public doesn't want to go see these movies, I can understand why DC has to pivot and go, let's start over and do a new Superman and try to just do a better story than last time.
But the thing is, there's so much out there, from the different stories like the Flashpoint, and I go to a comic book store and I have and I've been told I have enough, but you go look and there's so much to build from and so many stories. So they have the canon, I think is the term, to do this. And again, I admire what was done. I mean, didn't Zack Snyder have a role in Man of Steel? Wasn't he the executive?
He directed Man of Steel. He directed Batman v Superman. He directed Justice League. So
he was all three of those. That's what I thought. And that's the same Zack Snyder did 300 with the Spartans too, right? Man of Steel had a lot of that intense feel. Real quick, I've been a fan of The Dark Knight Returns forever. So when I saw that scene of Batman versus Superman, that's definitely right out of that chunk of the comics. The scene with the suit, they're missing is Green Arrow shooting the arrow into his Achilles with the kryptonite arrow. But so there's been a lot of stuff pulled from stuff I have familiarity with. So I didn't read a lot of Wonder Woman, so she's been a good, or Aquaman. So I've enjoyed Jason Momoa's role as Aquaman, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I mean, that first Wonder Woman is a fantastic movie. It could, has that one done $1 billion, or did Aquaman was the only one that really did hit $1 billion, right? I mean, I know it did well, but
Aquaman hit $1 billion. I think Wonder Woman did like 800 and something million. So. But it was one of those things where it was kind of, Wonder Woman is kind of everyone's favorite movie of the DCEU. Everyone kind of, it's like the consensus. I honestly think The Flash it's a more entertaining movie for me, but I think Wonder Woman is a great movie. I honestly, I like Wonder Woman 84 also. I don't think that's
I like it too. I especially like the beginning. I like when they do all the scenes about how she becomes who she is and growing up as an Amazon. That they do a wonderful job. But that's time that you didn't have to spend, and they do, which, those of us like Greek mythology, it hits those heartstrings too. So it's really very cool. And I'm appreciative for the past 10 years, you think about, the past 10 years from 2008 to 2018 to 2019, when you had Infinity War wrapped up, 11 on the 11th year with Endgame. It's been 10 years to the DCU, and to me, I enjoyed the Flash. I put the Flash to me somewhere behind Wonder Woman, just because I just thought Wonder Woman was a little bit better done, and I think Gal Gadot is a little more talented of an actor. But again, they're all fun movies to watch, and you'll find me watching them again. I own them all on my Apple movie library. They're fun to watch, and if you like watching something that's not Marvel and superhero you like, I like popping one of them in, and I'm definitely going to add the Flash when it's available, to purchase too. So,
yeah, I will too, because this is the one that I think really hit home with me, and really, I just think it's really entertaining. It's a fun movie to watch, and there's so much to see, and there's all these homages to all these older characters, and I think that's great.
This one did it right in that terms of giving homage to all it was great to see. And the fact they went back to the Superman and Flash of my dad's generation, the black and white, that was pretty cool. I have to tell my dad about that. And he's like, oh, he won't sit through a 2.5 hour superhero movie, but I could fast forward when I have an Apple, and he'd watch, because he remembers watching that growing up as a young, a boy and a teenager. And, so.
Yeah, the movie, it really celebrates kind of all of DC on screen, and it does a really good job of that.
I agree.
One of the final things I want to touch on is I want to talk a little bit about Barry's mom, Nora Allen. I think her quote that we see throughout the movie, I think it's a really great quote where she tells, she's telling young Barry, because he's got this math problem, and the math problem is like, it's like write out how many times you can 24 can be the answer. And obviously they chose 24 because there's 24 hours in a day, and the movie's all about time and time travel. So that's that part of it. But I like how she tells him, because he's frustrated because there's an endless amount of possibilities. And she says, not every problem has a solution. Sometimes you just have to let go. And then of course he then has to tell younger Barry later in the movie, who younger Barry's determined, no, I'm not going to let mom die. I'm not going to let Supergirl die. I'm not going to let Batman die. We're going to I'll do this forever. And that's why he becomes the Dark Flash, because he will never give up. I'll run back in time until I fix it. But the thing is, he can't fix it. And I like how then Barry uses the same quote from his mom to tell him,
absolutely,
not every problem has a solution. I thought that was really well done, the way they weave that through the movie. And then the decision that Barry has to make to go back and basically ensure that his mom dies, so that he can go back and salvage the multiverse, the universe. Really good stuff in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. And the one thing I saw him put that canned tomato back on the shelf and look up. And I'm really? And then I am like that, because they did it fast, and you've seen it 4 times. You have to be paying attention, and then you see what that was really great. Quick question on a side note: the actor that originally played Barry's dad in So I like Ron Livingston. Obviously, he made himself famous in Office Space. But what was that other actor not available? And I had no issue with that. I thought, just for continuity's sake.
Yeah. So in Justice League, Barry Allen's dad was played by Billy Crudup, who wasn't available to shoot this movie, so they had Ron Livingston to do it. Yeah.
Yep. Ron did it. I thought Ron, for the father and the family scenes, they alluded to some of it, but they were all, talking. There was no flashbacks, but I thought they did a nice job. And like I said, the actress that played his mother, that played Nora, what was her name?
Maribel Verdú.
Yeah, she was, like I said, she felt like she could be everybody's mom. She was awesome. She was great. She stole the movie for me. She really did.
Yeah, no, she did. To me, the performances of this movies were really solid. From having 3 different Batman, obviously Clooney was more of kind of a joke, but Affleck was great. Keaton was great coming back. Barry's mom and dad were awesome in this movie. It was really like well done. And of course, Ezra playing 2 versions of Barry, and then later on 3. I guess something else to ask you about the Dark Flash. Did you pick up right away that it was going to be that Barry was the Dark Flash?
I didn't know what that entity was, because I don't know the Flash bad people or bad guys or villains that well. So I figured we'd encounter it again. But then I was like, oh, so when we got to the point of it's the version of him that just wants to keep trying to fix time, and in this movie, it looks like he did beat him and put him down by saying you can't fix things. You just have to accept that there are those. You're the point at the pendulum, and you just have to let those events happen to continue on your timeline, right? So
right.
So,
and then
but
the Dark Flash. See, the Dark Flash. He sat. He put Barry on this track because he's the one who knocked Barry out of the timeline and into 2013 originally. But then he realizes that like the only way for him to ever win is he has to kill Barry, our Barry. And so then when the Dark Flash goes to kill our Barry, younger Barry sacrifices himself, and the Dark Flash basically ends up killing himself because he kills the younger version who ends up becoming the Dark Flash. So
time travel gets crazy, but I get it.
Crazy, yeah.
I get it. I get what happened.
Right. So. Yeah, and as Yesenia says here, like she's expecting the reverse Flash. I was too. I think that would have. Well, we talked about it earlier. Like, I think they did a good job with everything else in the movie. Like, I think like the reverse Flash is such a big Flash villain that it like that character deserves his own movie as far as being the villain.
Right.
And in this movie, you had so much going on with, bringing Keaton back and going back.
Right.
To Man of
That's what I was saying. Yeah, it was so much going on. It could be too overloading. Yes.
Yeah. You're introducing a new Supergirl. Like you're introducing all these great things, but, it just would have been probably too much. The movie would have had to be like an hour longer to make that work. Or maybe it would have had to end with a cliffhanger with like, we learn it's the reverse Flash at the end, which, hey, that could have been great too. But then obviously this movie is not going to get a sequel. And that's a bummer for me because I really think that like this movie does, I think I want to see more of this stuff. I think it left me wanting more at the end of this movie. And I would like to see these alternative paths. Like, what if it were Keaton and Supergirl that come back? Or what if it were Keaton, Supergirl, and Henry Cavill, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and all that stuff? Like, I feel like that could have been a great story going forward. But I don't think we're ever going to see that, unfortunately.
Yeah, so to me, much of a sports car just feels like when GM did away with the Pontiac line, which has a really sporty street cars, right? So I think it's been bad timing here because you had so many things going on in the last year and a half, now going on 2 years, being 2023. But could this have continued? But they're just because I thought Peacemaker really, but again, that was a James Gunn thing, so that that showed pumping life back. But I thought he was going to pump life back in and then continue to build on the successes or the 70, the 60 to 80% of the goodness of these movies to continue these storylines. But now they're just going to do a whole wipe and start again. So there's, we're going to, this 10 years of 2013 to 2023 is going to be just frozen in time with these movies, just kind of like the Christopher Reeve movies. And, you just go back and enjoy them for that timeline and that time frame and that group, that actor and that cast. And the same thing with these movies too. So,
yeah. And then, I mean, in the future, there's always the chance of them doing like a Crisis on Infinite Earths or something, or like a No Way Home kind of thing where you have, or even like with Spider-Verse, you have, instead of Spider-Verse, you have a Bat-verse or something.
Right.
Like we've had so many people play Batman. You could definitely, that's possible. All this stuff is make believe. They can make it work if they really want to. But yeah, I think that's a good point by you. And I really think that it would have made more sense. And originally the Flash was going to be after Aquaman. I think it would have made more sense if that were the way, like, if you're going to end this universe, having it start with Man of Steel and ending with the Flash that revisits Man of Steel would have been the perfect way to end it. Cap it. It's a 10-year run and cap it off. But since like I said, in August, we're going to see Blue Beetle's coming out. Now, Blue Beetle, it's a DCU movie, but it's a DCU character, which basically means they're introducing Blue Beetle, is that a character you're familiar with?
Not at all. I didn't want to stop by Comic Book Star. I'd have to go look, and I didn't want to. I saw that. I'm like, this is distracting. I'm just going to focus on the Flash, and I'll figure out Blue Beetle at some point. So
Blue Beetle, I know a little bit about the character, mostly from like video games and stuff, but and there's different versions. It's almost like Ant-Man, how there's different versions of Blue Beetle, and the current version of Blue Beetle is a character named Jaime Reyes, and that's the one that we're going to see in the Blue Beetle movie in August. And I'm interested to see that. And I'm also interested to kind of read some comics to kind of get some background on the character. And that character, from what it sounds like, his movie is not going to include anybody else from the DCEU. Right. And so that means it makes it perfect for that character to continue over to the new universe because he's basically a character that's not really a part of the current universe.
He has no affiliations and
no affiliation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, the trailer, they reference Batman, but that could be anybody, it doesn't, they don't say a specific Batman.
Right.
So that would work. And then of course, the final movie of the DCEU is coming around Christmas time when Aquaman: The Lost Kingdom, the sequel to Aquaman, comes out. And I'm interested to see what they do with that. And if there's any kind of like last hurrah for the DCEU in that movie, or if it's just a straight up like, this is the Aquaman sequel. This is just the Aquaman story. We're not worrying about the Flash or Superman or Batman. We're just focused on.
I honestly feel it's going to be that way because in Aquaman, it really focused a lot. Like, to me, it had a lot of parallelisms to the Black Panther movies where they focused on the story of the Black Panther. What kind of this is going to focus like the first one did, Atlantis. But it was interesting though because it was Justice League that introduced us to how Atlantis was going to become about. And isn't I know Amber Heard is not returning this one, but Mira, is she being played by someone else in Aquaman too? Right?
No, I think Amber Heard is.
She is Mira. Okay. I have to go look. I just haven't done research. Okay, but that's good. I like consistency. I like cast consistency myself when it comes to some of these stories. So. Yeah. To my point, I'm glad they kept Ben Affleck through this to the point they needed to. Right. So in the Flash, it was great. So.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And so as we're kind of wrapping up here. Any final thoughts on the Flash? Would you tell somebody to go see if they haven't seen it?
I definitely would. I probably will go see it again. I just need to make time as a busy dad and stuff, but I'm glad I had time on the road. But I can't tell anybody's asking me, I'm like, if you like Justice League and you like the Flash Knight, you're gonna love the Flash. He did a great job. And they're like, I'm like, did you see the trailer? And people my age and we're just a little bit older than you, it's just you see the bat. When I saw that and I saw Michael Keaton back as Batman, like I didn't know where it was gonna go. But like that alone is gonna pull a whole generation in and back. I mean, like you and Yasina and Brittany knew of Michael Keaton's Batman, so you have your interest, and we saw him the first time. So yep, and I agree with her. I tell people go see it. You're not going to lose out. It's going to be another fun superhero movie, and there's some great laughs in it too.
Yeah, I really I'm really so surprised about the box office being as low as it is, but just because I figured Keaton would draw people back. Because I know there's so much love for that version of the character and the nostalgia, and I'm 43 years old, and Michael Keaton was my first real Batman, and
he was my first real Batman. When I was 19 and you were 9, right? So
yeah, right.
I got it. It was cool. I could drive, so I wanted to drive a Batmobile. A Black Dodge Viper was the closest I ever got, right?
Well,
so
that's the thing is over the years I've liked all the Batmans and I've liked all the Batmobiles, but Michael Keaton is my favorite Batman.
Right.
Michael Keaton's Batmobile to me is hands down the best Batmobile. If I had all the money in the world, I would buy two Batmobiles. I would buy the Keaton Batmobile and I would buy the Tumbler from The Dark Knight Rises, just because why not? I'd love to have one of those. It would work great in Houston traffic too.
Absolutely.
But there's so many great things about the Keaton stuff and all the suits, and like I said, the Batwing, even though it's a new Batwing, I love the nostalgia of this movie. And I mean, I saw the movie 4 times, so obviously I highly recommend it.
That many more times since I've talked to you. Great. So.
You know what? I was thinking about this. I saw Avengers Endgame 3 times. I saw the Joker, I believe, 3 times.
Right.
I've seen a couple of movies 3 times in the theaters. I believe this movie, I don't think I've ever seen a movie more than 3 times except for this movie. I think this movie is the movie I've seen the most in theaters. And I saw it all I saw it.
Bang, bang. Did you even have a day off?
Wednesday, Thursday. Yeah, actually I took some time off to so I could go see the movie. So I went Wednesday, Thursday, and twice on Friday.
That's what I meant. Did you have some time? So you went twice on a Friday. So gotcha.
Yeah,
so
I literally took off Thursday and Friday so I could see this movie. Yeah, because I've been looking forward to this movie for so long, and to me, it's such a bummer that it's it didn't do as well, and there's a lot of negative stuff out there, people saying it's terrible, and I'm just I just don't agree. And
I agree with you. And the other thing too, if I could, being a dad, I know it's a lot about his mom, but Father's Day is coming up, and it was retribution for him and his dad. I'm like, what a great Father's Day story. Go take your dad and see the Flash, because his father-son stuff in it. I thought the release timing, some of the theme was in there too. Just me,
No,
being a sappy old man.
No, the Flash, they marketed. I mean, at least on social media, they marketed it for Father's Day, and they say, "Hey, take your dad." It's they're kind of saying, "Hey, your dad's Batman is back," or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
And like you said, for Superman, you could say your dad's Superman, your granddad's Superman is back with George Reeves, or great granddad. Who
Exactly.
knows?
Yep.
Like, I don't know. I just think the movie was really well done. It
Yep.
was exciting, and it was so rewatchable. It was so
Mm-hmm.
fun, and I just haven't experienced that feeling with any of these DCEU movies except for this movie. I mean, I like the Snyder Cut a lot, but it's a 4-hour movie. It's hard to rewatch a 4-hour movie a bunch of times.
So,
I've done it, but
yep.
in segments. I
Right.
can watch like 30 minutes here, 30 minutes
But-
there. 2 months later, I'll watch 30 minutes more. Like, it's hard to
Yep.
sit down. But this movie, I feel like I could put it on and just let it roll 3 times a day
Yep.
for a little while and not be bored, because there's just so many things. The Back to the Future stuff. It's just like, it's so much fun. It's
Yep.
just a fun movie.
That's one thing about living up north. Once November comes and the snow and it's piles, the one thing about and it gets the Sub-Zero weather thing is you do put a lot of movies on by the fireplace. So this will definitely be one I'll add to that. You know, and like I've watched all the DCUs. I've started on a Friday and let them run continuously through a Sunday on my area of the house with my TV where the fireplace is. You know, they're fun. You know, the Marvels and all of them. They're just all the Marvel movies. They're just a good time, and they're just a great escape from reality. And you know, I do enjoy comic books, but it's getting harder to see up close. So it's good to see the things on the big screen. So it's fun, and I'm just glad to see these things off paper, and the people are taking the time and effort, and the cast they haven't half-assed it. Every one of them has given their heart and soul to it, in my opinion, to make, and they did. And in my opinion, I know they do it for paycheck, but they've also done it for the fans. I really do. DCU, Marvel, all of them. There's love in the game, and there's appreciation of the fans, and I love that they'll do that. So
yeah, and this movie is, and there's a lot of fan service in the movie, but I like that stuff. Like, you know, I'm a fan. Provide me service. You know,
exactly,
like it makes sense. You know, so this movie really delivers that up with all the cameos and all the fun stuff. And I just think it's a good time. So I would highly recommend it.
I back you. I got your back on that.
I appreciate it, and I. Later on, I'm going to drop my rankings for the DCEU in the comment section of this video, so check that out.
I'll put mine in there too. I'll type them in a couple days.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Spoiler alert: The Flash is my number 1 now because I've seen it so many times, and you know what? Honestly, I'm probably going to see it again. Like
that's cool.
I just like the movie a lot. I've got almost all the Funko Pops. I've got a couple of shirts.
Cool.
Like and the Keaton stuff just brought me back, and so. I'm back for good.
Well,
so,
I can tell you what, I promise you I have the whole week of the 4th of July off. There's a movie theater attached to the whole water park and place we go. I'm going to go see it again just for our friendship, but just because it's a great movie. So I'll definitely see it twice. It just, again, for me to find time to take 2.5 hours out it's challenging, but it was so worth it. You know, you know, it's great. And sometimes I tell my family, you know, I go see a 9:00 show because that's the first time 9:00 p.m. because the first time in a week that I can have 2+ hours to myself to enjoy something like that. So, but this was definitely worth it. So go see it, people. It's a fun movie.
Yeah. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think you'll, at the very least, you'll be very entertained, and you'll be
absolutely.
Like, wow, this is much better than people are saying. And you know, the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is like 85%. So it's still fairly high, but the critic score is a little bit lower, and just a lot of people online are just very negative and like obviously didn't make the money they thought it was going to make. You know, people like Tom Cruise said it was like a great summer movie, which I agree with him. But I don't know. It's being labeled a flop, which kind of bothers me because I'm like, this is one of the better movies I've seen in a long time. And I don't know. I really enjoy it.
There's more of you and friends of you like myself that are podcasting, and 4th of July weekend's coming up. So this, you know, the Flash, he might be in a metabolic low right now, but maybe we'll be the shot in the arm he needs to go full speed. We'll see.
Yeah.
You know? It's not over yet, right? So
no, it's worth noting also that like Aquaman was the only one to make $1 billion, and that movie started out slow also. Now, granted, it came out around Christmas time, and then I think the word of mouth kind of picked up, and then it like took off overseas. So that might just be an anomaly, but I don't know.
Michael Keaton Batman, I think it's going to be huge if this, you know, once this hits worldwide. I mean, the way he plays it too, he doesn't let down. The only line that didn't make any sense movie, I love, have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight? But there was no room for that line in this one.
There was no room.
All the good ones were in there, right? No. You know, how much do you weigh? Of course you think about it, and like, sure, 110. You think about when he says that to Kim Basinger, right? So, who was quite a woman in her day too. So, but yeah, I thought, and the best part is he actually gets the weight right. That's what the hilarious part was, right? Because the batarang works and they get up, you know, back in the day where instead of stopping 5/8 of the way up. So, so there were some great callbacks and just some fun stuff. So hopefully with this, we'll do like the Aquaman and we're just in that little lull and we'll get the Flash metabolism up. And next thing you know, we'll be messaging in 4th of July and maybe we'll be at that billion mark. We'll see.
Yeah. That I don't think it's going to do that, but I would like
Even
for
half a billion. Get half a billion.
No, half a billion would be great. I think that'd be great. It's one of those movies where because it costs so much, it has to make a tremendous amount for them to make a profit. So that, and I mean, honestly, like, do I really care if they make a profit? Not really, but I would like to see more of this kind of stuff. And so, like, them making a product is a byproduct of me getting more of what I want. So
exactly. We have no other benchmark besides the what they make. We can have lots of podcasts and lots of friends and comments, but you know what's our metric? It's how do they do at the box office, right? Unfortunately,
unfortunately, that's really all that matters, and that's sad in this case because I really think this is a great movie, and I think everyone should give it a shot. And
well, who else was in the chat? Was you see? I saw Yasina was, and she obviously was a huge fan of the movie. Was there anybody else we missed in the chat that was able to join us? Okay,
Yasina told us all about it, so we appreciate her joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a great way to join us. We do these live streams. Join us in the chat and tell us, what you think about the movie, what you think about our show. We're also on social media, so check us out there. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. We're at Watchers Basement. So find us on social media. Hey, if you're on social media, use the hashtag Watchers Basement. We appreciate that. And if we're on YouTube right now, but if video isn't your thing, if you like audio podcasts, we have audio versions of the same show on we're on podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And hey, if you're listening to us on one of those platforms, give us a 5-star rating. We appreciate it. So, Drew, as we get out of here, I really appreciate you joining me today. Thanks for your enthusiasm.
Having me again.
Yep.
Thanks again for having me. I love it. And I was so pumped after seeing it. I was like, sure, I'd love to be on and talk about it, especially a super fan like you. You just bring my fandom to another level. So thanks very much, my friend.
Yeah, I am I love Marvel, and I think the MCU is far superior to the DC movies.
Yep.
But I was more of a DC kid. As a kid, I was more of a DC fan.
You've always been a Superman fan since I've known you. I met you in
fan.
2019. Yep.
Yeah, and I obviously Michael Keaton's Batman was huge, and I've always really leaned toward the DC characters, even though I love the Marvel characters too.
And, I get it.
I mean, it's there's so much out there to love. I just hope people give this movie a chance, and hey, give this podcast a chance though. And
absolutely.
Drew, again, appreciate having you. It's always great to have you on the show. So for Drew, I'm Justin saying thanks for watching, thanks for listening. We will see you next time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.